right, you kiddos ready?
Yes, sir.
Standing Still Podcast. My name is Steve Hoffa. Gosh, super stoked that you're here. Glad you're with me. What a show for tonight. Made it to 100.
Oof.
Didn't know how I was going to do one. Still didn't realize how I did it, and now I'm at 100. Years later, I've got some of my best friends here to celebrate it with me. We're going to kind of go through the history of the show. I think it's going to be a really good time. Just making the notes really took me back to kind of where I was at in my life when I did those shows. But to start it off, let's introduce some similar faces. I've got Jeff Williams right here, Cody Lee, who hasn't been on since I think it was episode 9 or something like that.
9 or 10, yeah.
Right, which, if my math is correct, is a lot of episodes.
A lot of episodes.
So,
Lots changed.
And then the most popular, I don't know if I would say popular, but the most
featured.
Most featured, yeah. He's our most to the front store mannequin. Will Small, welcome back, dude.
Thanks for having me.
No, but thanks for coming on, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So here's the design, the structure that I'm thinking of, right? I kind of told you guys ahead of time, hey, if you have a few favorite episodes or maybe some conversations that I've had either with you guys or just that you've heard on the show through the last few years, go and write that down. And then I literally just went 1 through 100 and said, okay, if something jumped to my head, I could sell and kind of talk about every single one if I wanted to and do a deep dive on each one. But if something really jumped out, then I wrote it down. And so it's quite a bit. I got like 3 or 4 pages of just the list of stuff. So I think we're going to go through. We'll start at number 1.
Wow.
And I wrote the dates. So you can kind of see when I was on a path of like doing them every week and then I stopped. And then so I'll tell you, it's cool because you'll hear the behind the scenes of what the episode. So you'll be able to hear the episode and go, oh, okay, cool. But then you also hear where I was at in that life. And there's one episode, I only listened back to one and it kind of shook me a little bit. I got to be honest with you. It was pretty interesting. Yeah. It's almost like I'm looking at my diary for the last 4 years or whatever.
Sure. Yeah, I would agree.
But it's almost even more because it's not even just my words. Like I could hear, I'm like, wow, I sounded so young.
Yeah.
But and I could totally, and I remember exactly where I was when I was speaking about it, and it's crazy. So we'll get into that. And also just, dude, I made it to 100.
That's awesome.
Congratulations, buddy.
Awesome.
I know. Shout out to Jacob for making me the Standing Still mugs.
Yep.
I was going to ask you kind of hit on it already, but like you listened to number 1 recently?
Not number 1.
Towards the okay.
In my life, I've listened back before just because it's interesting to me. Like, where was I at on the first episode? Because, it's been years. But I'll tell you which one it is. It was the first solo show. That's the one I listened back on because those ones are really usually deep and it's like about my own life.
Yep.
Right.
And it was the first one that I had done, and I didn't know how it was going to go, and it's very interesting how it ties into my life today. This whole it's going to be interesting. It was kind of, it's interesting because I just did a review of 2021, which was like a deep dive, and like you have to think and reflect on the whole year. And now I'm like, this is so much of like I had guests and it was about them, but there's so much where it's about me too. A lot of my life most of my life is on these shows.
Do you ever go back and listen to one and be like, damn, that was such a good show?
I have before.
Yeah.
It's not like every Tuesday,
No, I know.
Tuesday standing
But I'm
still.
saying,
On the way home, I'm listening to the favorite hits. Like I'm not
Just inviting everyone over.
I'm not that guy. But like there's definitely some where I'm like I've 2 years later, I'm on the treadmill at the gym and I'm laughing because I'm like, God, that was just
such a good one.
There's some episodes where the guest was killer, and then there's some episodes like I'm hoping for this one, and it's been many with you guys, where what I love about hanging out with you guys really comes through. And so people go, oh, why would you want? It's not that I'm like jerking off to me like, oh, look at the way I sounded. You know what I mean? But it's like you reliving. Yeah, it's like when you hang out with friends, it's a great time.
Yeah.
And you get to just press play again. So that's, if it comes out well.
Yep.
But anyways, let's get into it. Number 1. And I wrote the dates down for each one of these. September 21st, 2017 is when this came out.
Holy crap. I did not realize it was that long ago.
Yeah, I've been at this for a little bit.
Wow.
So I haven't been doing it continuously. But this isn't like a 3-month dream. This has been consuming me for a long time. Okay, so September 21st, 2017. We're in 2022 now, if you haven't made that connection. That is Yeah.
You know what?
4.5
Dedication.
years.
Now you're on the 100th episode.
Right.
Dude, that's awesome.
What's really cool, okay, so number one was with Courtney Kindig, who's a good friend. I don't see her too much anymore, but she's still a good friend, and I know if I hit her up, we could always hang out, and it would be right back into where we were.
Mm-hmm.
And my good buddy Gabe, who I can't say his last name on the show because he's super paranoid about it. So every time, if he's been on a few episodes, and I always have to introduce him as my good buddy Gabe, because
Yeah.
he doesn't want his last
I
name.
love that.
I just call him
Yeah.
Grady.
Right.
My good buddy.
That's how I know it's
Gabe.
Grady.
I've known him since he was a little kid.
No, really?
Yeah, he used
Yeah.
to be my cousin's neighbor, so I grew up with him.
Oh, yeah, okay. Cool. So, Courtney Kindig, Gabe, I remember, and I think we've talked about it before, just us friends, but like when I started and if you listen to it, I didn't know what I was going to say 5 seconds into it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was just going, and it was kind of like, oh, fuck, I'm like, this is the show.
Yeah.
I didn't even know how to be like what's standing still? Describe it. So you can hear me like, this is standing still, and then like when I go to describe what it's going to be about, I'm like fumbling through it. I mean, obviously it's obvious to me,
Yeah.
but I was like, I didn't even plan that out. Like the first thing was like, what is standing still? And I was just like riffing in the moment, and it sounded so bad. I was like, that's not what this is going to be about, but that's what it is.
Yeah.
And it's funny because it was very, I think it's very rough, but it showed a lot of potential. It was what I was excited about. Like there's funny stories in episode 1.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
that really fired me up of like, all right, there's something here,
Yeah.
you know? So that was episode number 1. The next one that jumped out at me is episode number 3. And here's why. So Will Small's first appearance on the show. Also had my good buddy Gabe once again, and then this other gentleman, Michael Meza.
Oh yeah.
And if you listen to the intro, my good buddy Gabe and Michael Meza have a little piece of like where they're saying, you know, parts of like the intro music.
Uh-huh.
Like they read lyrics. I had a few people read lyrics, and then I pick and chose or whatever. They just happened to be at my place that day. Anyways, this one stuck out for me because at the beginning I didn't know how to differentiate, because one of the main reasons why this started, which I've said, is that I wanted to do stand-up but couldn't do it with the schedule.
Mm-hmm.
So this episode was a really big, when I look back, of like I was really trying to just do stand-up on this episode.
Got it.
And there was funny, and I was also trying to do it all ego with like nothing written down.
Uh-huh.
And like the first 20 minutes I had to cut out of this one, which I normally don't cut anything out, especially nowadays.
I don't remember that.
It was, so this episode has the me losing my virginity story. I made it to episode 3. That story.
Before you drop that.
Yeah, before I dropped that ball. I was already running out of material at episode 3.
Took some composure.
That's right. That's right, because they did theirs also.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh,
And then I didn't
yeah,
really have a
yeah.
good story, so I just
Right.
got like glossed over, thankfully.
Yeah, that was the first time I heard coitus. You know?
Oh, yeah.
That's his name. He's like, really? You and Jessica were doing coitus? Or like, we're performing coitus or something like that? That like still is like, every time I see him, I'm like, coitus, dude. That one's still just stuck. But no, I remember I didn't have anything written down. I knew I was going to talk about the virginity thing just because I had that in my head. But I remember I got pizza for you guys. This is when I was still like, I would cook a full meal and blah, 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 before everybody would come over, which just time-wise and busy schedules, that just kind of faded away. But I remember I went to Domino's and there was like something that I thought was funny, and I was like, oh, I'll riff on that. And I tried like just riffing on that for like the first 20 minutes,
Uh-huh.
and it was terrible. Like nobody, you guys weren't laughing, and I could tell I was like, this sucks. And then, so I ended up having to like cut the first 20 minutes out. But I was also still doing longer shows, so it was still like over an hour, I
Oh,
think.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was
Yeah.
trying to do like 2-hour shows every episode
Right.
with nothing written down and having only done 3 podcasts. Like kind of ballsy. Like, dude,
It's ambitious.
you're right.
for sure.
Like,
Especially if you don't
it's-
have the right guest, for sure. If you're-
Right. Sometimes 2 hours goes by like that.
yeah.
It does.
And
It
sometimes I'm like, I'm only 29 minutes in. You know what I mean? I'm like, shit, dude.
Yeah.
But anyways, so that was episode 3. It was really interesting. Yeah, I'm trying to. It's interesting because, like I said, I can do a full packed. I can do a whole hour on each
Yeah.
one of these, breaking it
Yeah.
down. But I'm also trying to keep it going because I have so many notes.
Oh, yeah. You got
Mhm.
100.
And then, like I said, so you guys kind of have what your favorites or what stuck out for you. So
Yep.
as I'm going through it, if I either skip it or when I get to it,
Yep.
speak up.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which
Okay.
I think you're coming up on mine, so I'll just preempt with that.
God, my heart is racing so fast. And obviously, I'm doing a lot of talking, but you
No,
guys
you're
will-
good.
you
No,
guys
no,
will
no,
get
for
into
sure.
it. Okay, so number 5.
Yep, that's what I had written down.
You really? Okay.
If 5 is what I think it is, then I wrote that one down as well.
This was Keanu Estrada, Katie Lopez, and again, Michael Meza. This episode, I learned a lot because this came out right after the Las Vegas shooting.
Okay.
Mhm.
And I knew all those people, and they were all there. So I learned a lot on this episode because, one, it did extremely well. To be honest with you, it's one of the best, like, initial, just like a ton of people listen to it, or quote, a ton of people, because it was like a hot topic, you know what I mean? It was it came out like a week after it happened.
It was a current event.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. It was huge current event, and then I had people that were there, so like people that probably have never listened, that was the only show they've ever listened to, and they're never listened again, but they listened to that episode.
Yeah, because of perspective,
Right. And it came out right when the show was like, I just announced it. So there was probably a lot of people like, oh yeah, I got to check out his show that he just started. And then that happened.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. I learned a lot because the structure of that show, it was like over 2 hours, I think, at least 2 hours.
That was one that didn't feel like it, though.
Right. And the thing about that one is I learned a lot of how to structure a show and tell somebody else's story. Because we had the structure of all of them went there for the whole weekend. And the crazy part where the shooting happened was at the very end of the weekend. It was at Sunday night.
Right.
But it was not cool. But the interesting structure that I really learned from was I was like, all right, let's start on your weekend. So we got to hear everybody go day by day. And if you hear me, that style has really stuck of like, all right, let's talk about your life. And we go, what was your childhood like? And I know how to just like walk somebody through a period of time. So that was really jumped out at me because we walked through their whole weekend, and it was also hilarious.
Right. Yeah.
Until it was super funny because, I mean, we got people with IVs because they were getting super drunk, and it was hilarious. The stories were super funny. So I was like super stoked on that end. And then when we got to the end, it almost worked out perfectly in the sense of like it wasn't at the beginning and then they still had the weekend where it was like, how do I recover? It was like hilarious. And then you get this bombshell at the end, and I was speechless because, I mean, we're talking, Katie had somebody, their head got shot off right next to her.
Gosh.
Keanu got shot through the arm.
Yeah, he had surgery.
Right, had to have surgery.
I'm probably getting ahead, but there was another episode with him, correct?
There is, yeah.
Okay.
I had him come back.
That
kinda
one
talk about it.
stuck in my head, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. So, anyways, I learned a lot. Yeah, that's why I wrote down. I left speechless. Learn how to follow through the show and kind of how to follow a storyline. But that one was by far the biggest episode at the time, and it still comparably it did really well, which is kind of embarrassing to say that my 5th episode is like still really big. But
No, that's
I mean, it was
at all.
just powerful stuff.
it was just I knew it at the moment, even with my little experience. I was like, this was a great show, and I was just super blessed to have those individuals on.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
My takeaway from that episode, if you don't mind me cutting in here,
No, go for it.
and you really already hit on it, was the structure of it. Like it was, the first half of it was hilarious, and I was like dying laughing. And then all of a sudden at the end, obviously more serious circumstances happened, and you kept like, it was like a drama, it was
Right.
like you kept like it going through, and there's 3 people, and it's hard to have everyone interject because everyone was like, oh well, when this happened I was right here, but you still kind of had like that chronological like build up, like to
Right.
where everyone's like freaking out and trying to get out of there and everything
Right.
like that. It was like, because usually it's like, somebody sees a car accident and then they're like, I was doing dishes and I heard the boom,
Right.
but it wasn't like that at all. It was like, all in the moment.
It was heavy.
yeah.
No, it was.
I kind of forgot how funny that episode was now that you mentioned it, too.
Right.
Because it was super powerful. Because, like, I just remember being like, wow. Yeah,
Right.
especially because I know those people. So it's like I love Keanu, and that was just
Sure.
crazy. But from your perspective, I didn't realize. I didn't think about that. Because that is true. I know you've told me before how you've improved, how you feel like you've gotten better as far as setting things up, communicating, being a good host, things like that. But I never thought that was your turning point episode, but that makes sense now that you brought it up.
I mean, it was a big moment. I wouldn't say like, oh, I've been a completely different person since then, but like it was also an interesting dynamic where you knew the ending as you're going through the story. So it's hilarious, even though you know it's going to turn tragic.
Yeah.
But even though you knew the ending, it still blew you away because of how, like you said, it wasn't just like, oh yeah, I saw that on the news. It was like they were there.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I knew all these individuals from different aspects of my life, and they kind of all knew who each other were, but none of them were like friends. So it wasn't like I knew 3 people that were in the same group that went there. It was like I knew three different people that were in 3 different groups that were there. So it was like totally like, oh, we were at this hotel, and then so it was 3 complete different storylines.
Okay, I'm
that were at
definitely
the
going to go
show.
back and listen to.
Oh,
this
dude,
one.
it's
a good one.
top 10 for
I
sure.
thought it was a group of like people amongst this group that went together and just told you like what happened. From so totally 3 different points of view.
No, and that's what's
That's
cool is they
crazy.
kind of all meet up too. You're
Wow.
talking totally different circumstances that all come together, and then it's
Right.
it's impressive stuff for sure.
You can tell as well that they were just tight, even though they didn't. Like I think I said,
Right.
because I knew him through, except for Michael Meza. He didn't go to high school with us, but we all knew each other from, we didn't. None of us hung out, but we all knew each other. But they were 91 strong. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
And it was just,
Wow,
like
crazy.
I said, you got somebody that got shot in the head right next to her, like right next to her. You got a guy that got shot in the arm. It was heavy. And
Yeah.
here I am. I was 24 at the time, and I was 5 episodes in, and I was like,
It's powerful.
as crazy, and I don't want to make this about me, but I was super proud of how that product came out, and I still was able to respect them. I wasn't just like, so what the fuck happened? Tell me all the gossip.
Yeah.
You know what I
right.
mean?
Yeah, you,
Which-
you
It's like, can you
approached
give
it
me?
correctly.
Correct.
Yeah, you're like, can you give me more details about that guy's head that was coming out?
Right.
You weren't like that. You were like
Right.
very.
I mean, there's
Yeah.
a lot of media coverage on that stuff, and that's some of my favorite content from that. Like, it's weird to say it's a tragic thing, but like that gave you some insight to what really went down that day
Right.
It was
without all the BS.
It was
you know what I mean?
Right. And it was an interesting thing because, it's not like I'm like, hey, I'm Joe Rogan where I really have something to offer. If you want to come on, you can come on. It was like, hey, I'm trying to do. And this was, dude, I didn't have cameras. I didn't have the curtains. It was like, you remember, it was a janky table. I
Been
didn't
saying
even
that
have
all
this.
day tonight.
Dude, it was a janky
Place
setup.
is crazy now.
And so I kind of felt a little intimidated just to ask him because I was like, you just went through some hell and back.
Right.
If you want to talk about it, I would love to, and we can take it. You know what I mean? It was but everybody was on the
True.
same page. It wasn't like one person didn't want to talk about it, so they sat there. It was just a lot of different angles and things that really came together into something special. And that's, just that episode alone I'll cherish for a long time.
Yeah, I bet.
Okay. Number 8. This is interesting. This is something that I feel like didn't go well. So this is 3 episodes later, November 5th, 2017. Courtney Kindig's back on the show. Roman Yunchai, who hasn't been on since, even though I have nothing but respect for the guy. And Stefan Hefner, who's been on again a few, 10 episodes ago or something.
The Scooter King.
Right. So this was my biggest factor because I had these guys on. I still, like I said, I was really bouncing forth about how many notes. And this was also in my period of life. It's kind of crazy because I'm totally different in this avenue of my life in the sense of like I know how to date. Right.
Yeah.
I just had this period last summer. Went on like 30 dates and whatever, like a couple months.
Yep.
Remember at the beginning, and by the beginning I mean the rest of my life other than this last summer. You know what I mean? Like I didn't know how to talk to women. I didn't know how to do anything.
Yeah.
So I remember Stefan Hefner was one of those guys that would just like be taking a drag out of a cigarette and was just like super chill. And when I would go to his New Year's parties, it wasn't like he's not a bad looking guy by any means, but he was not a model either. But he always had chicks hanging out. Like you'd go to his party. Like I didn't know how to throw a party and it wouldn't be a sausage fest. Where this guy, you'd go to his party and there'd be just as many, if not more, chicks sometimes. And I'm not saying he was just like Hugh Hefner just getting laid everywhere, but I just remember thinking I wanted to talk about that and kind of make fun of myself too. And it ended up turning, and I just got super like focused on Stefan, and we were talking about like joking, but also kind of serious. I was like, "What do you do to get women?"
Yeah.
And I remember Courtney and Roman, I like didn't give them nearly enough time, and it was super imbalanced, and it just like the chemistry didn't click, and I knew it wasn't good right after. And I remember like that was also one thing I didn't know how to. When a podcast goes terrible, you want to just be like, all right, can you guys leave? I just want to stew in how shitty I did on that. But you like people a lot of times are like, that was cool because they've never been on a podcast, so they want to like hang out.
Yeah.
And then internally, I'm just like, fuck, that sucked.
Yeah.
And I just want to like beat the shit out of myself. And I remember that they were like hanging out, and I was just sitting there like, man, that's not how I wanted it to go, or how I pictured it. And that was really a lesson for me of like how to bring everybody in, and just what it felt like when I didn't.
Yeah.
Right.
I do remember that episode though. They all did say some interesting stuff.
Yeah.
But you're right. I think
I just got too focused, and it was also, I think it's because I didn't have the material and know how to like really develop a show. When I had something, I just kept trying to like squeeze so much out of it, and I didn't know when to move on. And then I also just spent way too much time on one guest.
Got it.
Well, that's why it's kind of funny too, because I remember the content of that, and I remember Stefan, but I don't remember them. So it's funny that you say like they weren't like utilized enough because I don't know, my memory is shot anyways. But you know, I don't remember them being on it. I just remember it being you and Stefan with that content.
Right. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I don't really remember what I talked to Roman and Barney about.
I remember Roman. There was a big bit that you were giving him about like his arms and like.
You're right.
Yeah. Because he's a good looking dude. So
He's a really good looking dude, and he's like a bodybuilder, but the best looking way. He's not overdone.
that dude's
He's
always been super humble too.
Totally.
These guys are really into this dude.
He is. He's a good dude.
Yeah, he doesn't text me back anymore. I'm kidding. No,
He
but
ghosted you.
now that you bring that up, I think the idea that I had in my head was like Stefan's the cool guy, and then Roman's like this buff, like really good looking dude, and then Courtney was going to be the girl aspect.
Right.
That's kind of my idea, and I just got focused on Stefan and like I
Yeah, I
didn't
like
know how
the
to bring them
perspective.
in. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I also didn't. I was still very new at like making others feel comfortable.
Uh-huh.
Do you know what I mean? So it's like sometimes unless you ask them a direct question, they feel like it's a job interview.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I'm just talking to Stefan, they don't know how to be like,
Like,
let
it's
me
not
interject
natural.
here. Like I can
Yeah.
give my opinion. You know what I mean? So I was still very inexperienced at that. So that was a big learning curve. Okay, number 12, December 4th, 2017. Also, I want to make note because there's kind of this is still my first run of like when I first started, I was doing them every week and I hadn't stopped yet, right?
Uh-huh.
So this is still my first run. So number 12, David Rannis, who's been on a few times.
The
and
anchor.
is always funny. David Rannis, Matt Walker, and Danny Gonzalez. Love the hell out of these three gentlemen. And this one, I've listened back to this one and laughed. This is one of those ones that I was talking about earlier where it's just like I had friends on, and 90% of the show was us just telling stories that was like, oh, 3 out of the 4 of us had already heard, but that one guy didn't or whatever. So it was just like those, like, you got to hear this story about the one time he went to the beach and he was scratching his belly button when their strippers were there. And it was just like, you know what I mean? You just tell them war stories, but it was hilarious. We told them all really well. And like, so like, you know, you have those stories where you don't see a guy for 5 years and you're like, dude, you remember the time? And it was just nothing but those.
Reminiscing.
So, right. So like I can listen to that show today and I'll laugh.
Yeah.
Because it was just like, God, I really was able to capture. And I remember feeling like, God, like this was one of the really funny ones.
Yeah.
And I really was like, this is what I want the show to be. Like I can just have friends on when we can just shoot the shit and laugh and everybody's having a good time.
Yep.
And then the audience can feel like they're part of the friend group.
Yeah,
And
they're hanging out.
Right.
They're hanging out with the group. Yep.
Totally. And I just remember feeling like I fucking nailed it. Like this, it went exactly how I thought it was going to go. Okay. Number 16. January 8th, 2018, right? So next month, still on the same run. Zach Newman and Ashley Holton, who are actually now married. I knew these guys. This is definitely a learning curve. It did not go well. The reason why I say that is because this was a learning curve in the sense of like, you know, I'm always trying to like figure out like, oh, do you want to come on? Like, you can come on. Like, maybe I could, you know, like, and a lot of people would say no. It was very hard to like get people to come on the show. And they were kind of like, I don't know, like, but they were so good friends.
Mm-hmm.
And when they came on, I didn't know how to sell them. It just didn't go well. There was like no chemistry.
Got it.
And it was one of those things where I'm like, man, you guys are really chill and cool people, but I have no clue how to like sell it on a podcast. And it bombed. Like, I'm not gonna lie. I remember I was just like, you guys said no to coming on the show, and I said, just listen to you. Like, you know, I didn't know how to like make it
Comfortable.
go well.
And,
Like, it just, any kind of stories that I thought would be funny weren't funny. And just,
Got it.
it's weird because I'm like, God, I love those people, and I wish I could have done more justice. You know what I mean? But
Right.
that was kind of the biggest lesson. I was like, they were like, I don't know, like, and I totally pushed them to come on, and then I failed. Like, you know what I mean? So that was kind of a bummer.
I think some people get really nervous though when some people don't take it as just conversation, and
Right.
they come in the room and then it's just like what do I say? It's like 2-word answers.
for sure.
Like, Josh was kind of like
Yeah.
that. With
So Josh is like the most
Right.
outgoing
exactly.
social person, but
Right.
he gets in here and he said probably 10 words the whole podcast.
Right. You're right. And they're not like Josh in the sense of where they're just like crazy and kind of outlandish and funny.
Yeah.
But they're, like I said, they're just really chill
Interesting.
people. And I was like,
Yeah.
man, and I didn't know how to bring that out. I didn't know how to have that frequency too. And I was still trying to find the voice of the show.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I just had episode 12 where I was like, this is hilarious. And I was like, I'm going to try to do that on every single one.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not their gear. Like, they've made me laugh, obviously, but they're just really chill and just great people to have in your life.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how to bring that out. and just my inexperience, and then they also were really nervous. It just didn't work.
Yep.
But I remembered, I was like, if somebody says no, and this wasn't the last time I did that, but if somebody's like, I don't really want to come on, it's like, then don't ask them again. Because if you're trying to, sometimes it's ego. It's like, come on, like, I'll bring it out of you, and like, it'll be great. And then it bombs, and you're just like, fuck. You know what I mean? Like, they didn't want to come on in the first place, and then now we didn't make a good show. So, it's, you know what I mean? So that was that learning episode. Yeah. But, okay. Episode 17, this is a big one. It's my mom and my dad.
Okay.
John and Lisa Hoffa. This is January 15th, 2018. So, here's why this was big. Until this day, right, this was my new thing. So, I'd been doing this since, like, September, and now we're in January. Mm-hmm. So, I'd done, 16 episodes prior, and I had them on the show, and this was me trying to be like, hey, like, be proud of me. Mm-hmm. And I just remember... we talked about it with episode 5 with the Las Vegas shooting, but being able to walk through somebody's life and walk them through their life and let them tell a good story with your guiding hand, I feel like I killed it.
You did.
With my parents.
I remember this one. Yep.
There was a lot, and I was like my dad's, because he's all like, I don't fucking put anything on social media. I don't have any social media. Like, fuck that. Like, he's super conservative, like super, I mean, he lives in Montana. Mm-hmm. And he told a lot of stuff that I never heard. He's always been like, you don't need to hear about my childhood. And I'm like, how many dudes did you blow? You know what I mean?
But he was super comfortable too.
He was more comfortable than my mom.
Yeah, I was just saying he was super comfortable.
And my dad can be really funny, and that came out.
Yeah,
he totally just like came. I was like, did not expect that. I thought I was gonna have to be just pulling teeth.
When I didn't know your dad was an auto tech before.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean,
I didn't. I learned that too.
Yeah, when I listened to that one, I was like, oh, what? I didn't know that.
Right. He talked about like goofing around in like I think high school, and he like drove his dune buggy or his truck like through the school field, and I was like, I didn't fucking know that.
Yeah. And I don't even know. Not that I know your dad, but I'm saying like I feel like I know him through you. Right. But like, I guess that's never come up in conversation. But I thought that was pretty interesting.
Well, also, so a little behind the scenes. At that time, I was a 4th-year apprentice, right, in the 5-year apprenticeship thing, and I was working for this guy Pat at this company, and he was a general foreman, and I had so much respect for this guy. This guy is one of the best individuals that I've seen where you go, this guy is never out of sorts, treats everybody with maximum respect, is always calm. I've seen him stressed out, but he remains calm, and yet he's built malls. You know what I mean? Like, the guy builds shit, and he's so calm, so respectful, treats everybody with, like, it's just the best combination of being able to treat people with respect, remain calm, and shit, like, make shit happen.
Still get a job done.
Oh, my gosh, like, super inspiring that way. And I remember I was on his crew, and I told him about it, and he's like, all right, I'll check out your show. And he came back in the next day, and this was the newest episode. And he was like, to be honest with you, I was very impressed. He's like, you were able to walk through the story, not make it about you. He just had nothing but good words to say, and it felt so genuine. And I just felt so fucking proud. You know what I mean? Oh, it felt so good. Yeah. And so, again, I've had my mom on when she's come to visit from Montana. I was like, hey, you're here, let's do a show. But I haven't had my dad on again. And it would be fun to have them both on again.
I would agree.
But
it made for a good one.
Yeah. Yep. And so that one's definitely a shining light. Even that long ago, it's cool to see. Even at my inexperience, I'm like still proud of that episode.
Yeah.
You know. But okay, number 19, and I'll make this one quick. This was 2 episodes later. This one was the mom episode. So Stacy, Will's mom,
all the moms, yeah.
Stacy Small, our friend Chris and Zach, their mom, Jody Turner, and our other friend Todd, his mom, Christina Palazzolo. And really the only reason why I wasn't like sitting around like, God, I'd love to have a fucking bunch of moms. But to give you guys some background, Jody Turner is who she invited me to their home for this Thanksgiving and this Christmas. And she's done it many years. This is the only time I've ever said yes, just because I don't know, I felt comfortable. But that's who she is. She's always made me feel comfortable. I've gone and hung out. I'd be like, hey, I'm in the area. Want to talk? I've gone and hung out with their mom. Sorry, Zach, Chris.
Yeah, I was going to say.
But I can just shoot the shit with Jody all day long.
Yeah, she's an easygoing person.
Right. And I just remember at that time, I forget, they host a lot of parties and stuff like that, get-togethers. And she was telling me, because she is a widow and she was going through a lot of stuff, and she was just like, yeah, I'm just kind of bummed. I'm just, not feeling well right now. And, she didn't say like, oh, poor me, I'm really depressed. But she just, she led me into that kind of moment. And I just remember thinking like, God, Jody's such a great person. And I threw that whole show, and everybody was in on it except for Jody. I, invited her friends. which is your guys' moms, you know what I mean? And I just remember the whole show was a reveal of like, I threw this whole thing. I had them over for dinner just to say like, we're all here with you basically. And it was a good moment.
Yeah.
Number 20.
Well, sorry to go back on that too.
Yeah.
Now, like Christina, which is Todd's mom, and Jody, they're all in the Bunko crew together.
Yeah.
So like I think it was a little bit after that where they like all just became like, you know, friends that hang out consistently.
Right.
Which didn't happen before then, but I'm not saying that, you know, you orchestrated that, but
you
definitely
orchestrated that.
was a step in that, you know, it was a little nudge.
Yeah.
You didn't like,
Okay.
you know.
There is a metapausal microphone that I glued together, and it's essentially a choir now. And I'm the conductor. Okay.
Oh, wow.
That'll be the greatest thing I've ever said on the show.
Oh,
Okay,
man.
So, okay, way to ruin a moment. But then, okay. So, I get to show how great she is. And I'm like, they're all going through menopause. Okay, so number 20 was the next one. I'll make this one really quick. This was one where I didn't know how to, not stick up for myself, but I didn't know how to like take charge in an interview because I was still very much, this guy that I knew, he was also a volunteer at the church. I was volunteering for like the high school group at the time. His name is Joshua Woodfield. Kind of a weird cat. And he had a YouTube channel, and I remember he was like, yeah, dude, I want to come on. I was like, sure, like, cool, because, you know, I was like trying to find guests and everything. This is February 5th, 2018, still part of that first run that I did. And he was like, man, I think he was, basically I got the impression, I didn't really know his story because he kind of was like volunteering for a little bit and then he disappeared. I think he went through some things in the sense of like, I think he got broken up with after like a long term, and he was kind of bumming. And anyways, I saw him at the gym or something, and he was basically saying like, man, I have this great story, like I really want to tell it. I was like, dude, come on and tell it. And I remember he just like it didn't go that well. And I remember he was fumbling like right away. He was just kind of like didn't know, and you know like and I was like, so like, you know, and he was like, just like, he's like, let me just tell this. And it just, I had other people tell me this, like yeah, he was kind of like walking all over you. And I was like, he was struggling to tell his story. And so I didn't know how to be like, you're struggling to tell your story, I'm trying to help you, but then you're like, shut the fuck up, like, let me
Yeah,
tell
you're
the
trying
story.
to guide him.
Yeah. And so it was kind of an awkward situation. And I remember I learned that. And he's still being like, oh, like, you want to let me come on? I'm like, no. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he was also like, dude, like, can you give me the file? Like, I want to put it on my YouTube channel. And I didn't know how to tell him, like, dude, this is my show. Like, you're going to come on my show. If you want me to come on your YouTube channel, then we can do that. But, like, this is my product. And you want to sell it on your shelf now? It's like, dude.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a weird situation. Okay, number 23. February 26, 2018, a Courtney Kindig solo show. The reason why I remember this episode is this was one of the first episodes where I was really down, right? I've talked a lot on the show about being depressed and stuff. I was really down, and we were talking about it, and we kind of realized that we wouldn't hit each other up for a long time, and then one of us would hit each other up when we were, like, bumming and, like, down. And I hit her up, and we did the show, and it was kind of negative and, like, just basically talking about how sad I was. And I didn't know... That was the first time I put something like that out, and I didn't know how I felt. I remember I like called my parents, and I was like, dude, this is really like depressing. Like, I don't know if I should put this out. It was really vulnerable, and I didn't know how to feel about that. Yeah. And it really ate me up of like whether or not I should put it out, and it was just eating me up. But I did put it out. And I'm not saying it's like the greatest content, but it was that was a line in the sand of like that was the first one where I really talked about it.
Yeah.
And there's kind of a pattern of like I've got great episodes where they're super funny, super powerful, but then, you know, there's a pattern in my life which reflects onto this show where I would go through shit and then I would be vulnerable in the show. But that was the first one where I put it out there. So that was kind of a line in the sand. That's why I wrote that one down.
That one you got a lot of feedback from like other people, right? Or was that later on?
I think so. It's hard to tell. There's been quite a few. It's hard to remember. That was in 2018 in February.
Oh, okay, yeah. Then it wasn't that one. That one, the one I'm thinking of, was more recent, I think.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
The Gift of Laughter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have that one written down. We'll get to it.
Okay.
Number 26, March 19th, 2018. John Parks. He was a foreman that I had at the time, and I just remember that was the first person I had where I brought him in from work. I always had to try to keep that separate because I was always afraid of like them thinking like, oh, you're interested in something else, and blah blah. And I was still an apprentice and blah blah blah. So that was the first time I invited a guy in who was technically my boss at the time, and it wwent really well. And he actually lives in your community, Cody.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he's a really good guy.
Right on. What's up, neighbor?
But it was a really great show, and I was like proud of it.
Yeah.
And so I was excited. Like I finally invited a guy in from work, and it went really well.
So yeah, you ventured out and it worked.
To kind of open myself up to like, yeah, I'm doing this. You know what I mean? Like to people at work. Okay. Number 29. I know you have this on your list.
I definitely
sure
had,
do.
This is my favorite.
Yeah,
my
same.
favorite.
Yeah, okay.
What's 29?
It sounds stupid because like I'm on it, so it's like, yeah, this is my favorite.
No,
but
not
I
at all.
actually
Not at
do
all.
think that, and I don't attribute
Is
it
it
to
ratings?
myself.
I love this one.
It is the
Yes.
ratings. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
But I don't attribute it to myself. I attribute it to you because you just like were the pilot there, and you just was making me laugh the whole time. I think I was just a laugh track for that episode, basically.
There's so many reasons why, because it's like, first of all, the balls it takes to go do that.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, let me.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
introduce it before we get too far into it. So, number 29, and I didn't realize this. I thought it had been, in one of the like in the middle episodes. I didn't realize it was this early, and I didn't realize this was on the first like run that I was doing them. But number 29 is April 9th, 2018. This was Courtney Kindig and Will Small.
Was that long ago?
Yeah, crazy, right?
That's crazy.
Dude, so here's why this was the episode where I had this. Here's what I love about this episode. When you see either a movie or a TV show and you go, that's original as fuck, and then they nail it.
Yep.
Right?
Mhm.
Like the idea that I had went very well, and it really translated, and I had the perfect people on. So this was the episode where I went up to 19 different women at various bars, restaurants, beauty salons, and I just said, hey, here I am, standing right in front of you.
Yep.
Scale of 1 to 10, where do you think I'm at? How good do you think I look? And then how old do you think I am? And I just took all the notes. I did averages. I had all the data. And so I had Will because I knew I was going to be comfortable with him. And then I had Courtney Kindig on again. These were the two
perspective.
to have a guy and a girl.
Yep.
These were the most comfortable I'd been. I felt free. And it was hilarious. It was so
hilarious.
funny. I've heard a lot of people, friends that like have come in here and there, but they don't listen all the time. But they've all I've had a lot of friends tell me like that was my favorite one.
It's one of those like you have like a favorite movie you could watch over
Right.
and over again, like right after it's over. It's one of those episodes where I could lliterally like replay it and laugh again.
I've said the joke of like I'm a certified 7.4. Like,
Yeah.
to this day, like I've still made that joke. But yeah, no, the replayability of it is very good.
Yep.
And it was great structure because I could just lean on the notes. But at the same time, it was like every interaction of those 19 different women was on a hilarious story.
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was like, and then I went to this, and the first one just fucking raked me over the coals. You know what I mean? My lowest score was the first set of girls that I went to.
Oh man.
And it was hilarious. And it's one of the best ones I've done, one of the funniest, and like I said, one of the most original. It took a lot of work on the back end. That was one of the most, where I had to work the most to just come up with, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
But
it
totally played out.
Yep.
So if you haven't already, number 29, it's
Great
definitely,
A must listen.
it's
Yeah.
definitely one of the tops.
I remember you preparing for that. Like
Yeah.
you were talking about it weeks before you even did it. Like
Oh, yeah, right.
You were like, oh no, dude, this one's gonna be great, and like you were already passionate about this, but it was like a whole new level of just
dude.
so much creativeness, and you just like putting yourself out there once again, kind of being vulnerable, and that's when the podcast got a little bit more real.
And it was interesting because I still didn't know how to talk to women, but for this episode, it gave me a new set of confidence. I don't know if it was because subconsciously I was like, I know I'm not going to date any of these women, so I could just talk. I don't know what it was, but I didn't know how to talk to women, but I was killing it of like selling myself and making them laugh to get the scores.
Yeah.
And that really helped my scores too. If I went up if I knew I was going to ask them for their number, I'd be like,
Yeah.
like I didn't know how to fucking talk.
Different
But
intentions. Yeah.
Will was there the one night. It was like the second night I went out and did it. We went to dinner at Slide Bar. We were Taco Tuesday.
yes.
Oh,
And
really?
I remember
you didn't
that.
even know. I just showed up. I was like, hey, by the way, I'm doing this. And you were like, what? It just was like.
And I was laughing. You
Oh,
were like,
yeah.
"Oh yeah, I'm gonna do this for an episode," and I was
Yeah.
like, "Dude, that's hilarious."
It was great.
You have to do it.
But okay, so that one, if you haven't already, it's one of my faves, and I've heard a lot of individuals say it's one of their faves or their favorite.
Top 3 for sure.
Okay, number 32. So May 7th, 2018. So this came out 2 days before my birthday. It's 24. First solo show. So this is the one that I didn't listen to the whole thing. It's like 25, 30 minutes. but I listened like maybe the first 5 to 10 minutes to kind of remember what it was about. This one was very interesting. For one, okay, this was also the last episode that I did on that first run of like, because I started and I wasn't like, I'm going to do this for a while and then take a break. I was like, I'm going to start this and it's going to be big. So when I stopped, obviously things are not going the best.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So 32, this was my first solo show, which is a huge learning experience to just talk by yourself and be able to like carry it. So I didn't know how that was going to go. I did very well, I think also because it was a shorter episode, so it's easier to just kind of entice people to come listen to it.
Yeah.
But also, it was extremely vulnerable. Here's the crazy thing that kind of shook me listening to it back today. For one, I got to hear my voice when I was 24, right? And I'm talking like listen, like hey, have a vulnerable moment, and I haven't listened back to it since way back when, and then now listen to it like 4 years later, and I'm like, dude, it's insane. It's almost like some kind of movie where it's like a virtual reality where all of a sudden you're in the room and you're like seeing the scene happen where it's like your parents died or something like that, you know, and you're just like, you're witnessing it because I could just hear, I remembered exactly where I was. It was crazy.
Like you experienced it again almost.
100%.
Yeah.
And also the crazy thing is that it was a lot about the same things that recently I've been talking about. It's kind of the same pattern of like overwhelmed, burnt out, not enough time, you know, not liking my job, and then not having enough time to pursue it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Right. And here I am, you know, that's what stopped me on my original run. But it was just an interesting experience to like, I mean, dude, I got to dive back into my head when I was really struggling as a 24-year-old. It was very powerful, you know, which obviously that only comes off on me, but very interesting.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I said before, it's not just like reading your words. Like I could hear and it's also interesting to hear how my voice changed. I was like, I could hear it. I'm like, I still have the deep voice and the pocket, and it's kind of similar tempo, but I'm like, dude, I'm 24 there. Yeah. I'm a kid.
So you can tell, and maybe other people can't tell, but you can tell like your emotions the way you,
for sure.
You know,
I feel like if we listened to it, we would probably be able to tell, or like people like close to you, like your parents, or you know, like
Yep.
It was just, you know, I got to really use it as a powerful diary, and it's interesting. You know, it's kind of, you know, as difficult as it is, right? That I learned on that 23 episode with Courtney Kinder of like putting myself out there to be vulnerable. Here I am all these years, and I have still so much to learn from it. You know, it's because it's so well documented. So
yeah, I actually highlighted all your solo episodes.
Really?
Yeah.
God, jerk me off, Cody.
Yeah, I mean, I just thought that was something that stood out to me because it takes a lot. Like that's a different podcast when you're not bouncing ideas off of people.
Yep,
right.
That's
agree,
a lot of composure. I think you pretty much crushed all of those. Like you handled it well. You crack jokes at yourself like a lunatic. It's hilarious. But and you're vulnerable. So all those episodes were either funny or powerful, and like you said, a little bit on the shorter end because you control the pace. So you kind of just go through it.
Yeah.
And they all are kind of just get to the point. And I do like all those episodes for sure.
It is a different show. And it is. I've kind of realized what I've done well, and I have like, all right, I have these avenues. It's not like I can do everything well, but you know, looking back, there's a few avenues that I do really well. Like I said, there's the, hey, I'm going to have some friends over like tonight, and we're just going to, you know, talk about life stories, or sometimes, you know, I'll have a topic like the girls rating me episode. So I can shoot the shit and make a really funny episode and just have like the audience be a part of the friend group. I do that extremely well.
I would agree.
Right. I do the solo episodes where it can be very vulnerable and I can really articulate what I'm learning in my own life, and it's very genuine, and it's really, really slow paced because I'm just letting that dead air hang. You know what I mean? I could feel it, like they're just, the audience is waiting on that next word. Like every word is key. It's not like everybody laughing and it's funny and it's like every word
like
needs
powerful.
to be there. Right. And then I've also had different interviews with just different guests where it's nothing about me and it's all about them, and I'm not trying to make anybody laugh. It's just an interview about their story and that storytelling aspect. I think those are my three biggest strengths. You know what I mean?
Some diversity with the podcast for sure.
Right. So, yeah, 32.
But a lot of people can't do that, though. Like, that's something you should be proud of, because there's definitely people who can't do solo shows. Even, like, comedians. Like, literally people that just need to have someone there, or else it's not the same, and they know that. You know what I mean?
It's hard. It's definitely, the solo shows, it really, there's been, I think, a couple where I've, like, done them, and, like, 10 minutes in, I'm like, I got to stop, you know what I mean, and start over, because it just isn't going how I thought. But it is interesting, and it's a different. Here, I'm in the room, which is great because I love what we're doing in this room.
Mm-hmm.
The solo shows, I'm not in the room. I'm in my head,
Oh, yeah.
especially before I did video, because I'm literally like just focusing. It's like almost like I'm blind. Stevie Wonder for a fucking minute.
Yeah. No, I get you though. You have to sell your emotions with just your voice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I have only one instrument,
Yeah.
and I'm like everything else is blacked out, and I'm just focusing on how I sound. Which, yeah.
I would agree with Cody though that that does come across.
Yeah.
Like when it's vulnerable and it's something that you can tell, it's really like in a good or positive, good or negative way.
Right.
You feel that it comes across.
Right. It's interesting because I'm blessed and I'm stoked because the show just kind of ended up like that. I didn't like set out to have all those different avenues.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's super hard to market that because it's so many different avenues. It's not like I'm just like doing a nerd show or doing an anime or just about motorcycles and whatever. So which is easier to market. So it's a blessing and a curse.
See, that's why I like this show.
Yeah.
The range of this show.
Yeah.
What other show are you going to get this amount of range?
Right.
I mean, like the solos, you have like, the goofing off with your friends.
Yeah.
Then you've had some like really good interviews, just the range of all that and the vulnerability ones. Like,
right.
You got a little bit of everything. That's why it's always every new show. You don't know what it's going to be.
Right.
It's always, something that's intriguing because it's like, I mean, I don't know, you always talk about your job and you said like, it's like monotonous. Like it's the same thing. It's not. This is why I think that you dig this because it's so the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
True. It's a great, and we'll get into it when I kind of later on, but it's a great tool as well.
Yeah.
Which the solo episodes, I mean, I did that 30 minutes or whatever it was, 28 minutes, in 2018, and I'm still learning from it.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic tool.
It's powerful.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
And wait, real quick before we move on too much further, how much of this have you gone back and were a little cringed by it? It's almost like an old Facebook post or something where you're listening to some of this and you're like, wow, dude, I've learned so much since then, or wow, that was a rough one, or
no, for sure. I mean, there's definitely episodes where I've talked about a few where it's like it did not go well, and it's whether because it's me or whatever, but and there's I'm skipping some, so there's some where it's like that's a solid episode, but it's kind of just.
Or it's like a key point.
Right.
Yeah.
It was kind of just, you obviously have your favorites and stuff that stuck out to you. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, hey, I did this one. I really, whatever this number was. And then there's 3 that got me to the next week. And I don't not like them, but they're not as great as the one right before it. And then 4 episodes later. You know what I mean?
Sure. It makes sense.
Sure.
You can't keep it.
And you were going back on the solo episode talking about how overwhelmed and busy you were. And I remember some of those coming out when we would just go have drinks or something. And you'd be like, man, I was so swamped this week, and I felt like I wasn't there like in the moment for the podcast,
It's I mean, and I've talked about this show a lot, but it's also, or I've talked about this aspect, but it's so because it's so genuine and vulnerable, it's so dependent on me and how I feel.
For sure,
right? If I'm killing it in my personal life, the podcast is thriving.
Yeah.
If I'm not, it really comes out. Sometimes, that's great because I'll do a solo show or I'll have episodes with you guys, some of my best friends. And it'll be a really deep, and that's great content. Mm-hmm. But then sometimes
it needs to be out there for sure.
It's just hard to carry that momentum. But
it is, yeah.
So that was the end of that first run of like,
really?
I'm going to do a podcast. So I went from like September to about May. That was the first of doing them like every week. That was the end of that first run, 32 episodes. So that ended in May of 2018, August of 2018. So basically at the end of the summer, I came back. And this is when I started doing YouTube for the first time. First episode, number 33, Damasio Sanchez, David Ranis back on the show, and Eric Flores. This one, so this is my first one back, first one on YouTube. And this one, again, is one of those where I had 3 friends on. It was fucking hilarious. Yeah. I've listened back to this one, and
Is this a San Francisco story?
Yes.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
There was a lot of like sex stories on this one.
It was a little vulgar, but it was brilliant.
The MILF or the GILF.
Yeah.
Okay. I remember this one.
San Francisco, some Tinder woman hooking up with like 3 dudes.
Yeah.
My story about like the house always takes a cut.
Yeah.
The girl wanting to hook up with my buddy, but this is my place. I own the casino. You know what I mean? So I got it. It's a lot of. And this one was I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, I was still, aware and kind of worried about being judged because I have some family that are the sweetest people ever, and they don't cuss and stuff like that. It's not my whole family, but there's definitely individuals. Hello, cousin Sarah, sweetest person I've ever met in my life. Just a high bar for that kind of avenue. And she listens to the show, and I remember thinking, I was like, I had a threesome, and it was the worst sexual experience of my life, like even till this day. And now my cousin Sarah's going to listen to it. And I was kind of in my own head, and I was thinking about that before I put it out. But again, back on YouTube, I just was so convinced. I was like, I got to be on YouTube. It's just to market it and have video clips and everything like that. And it was just, dude, it's one of the funniest I've ever done.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good one. I had to stop driving. I remember I was listening to it in the car. I was like crying, laughing. And I was like, I paused it and I was like, I'm going to finish this because I was like, I could not drive.
It's funny.
It was killer.
And I've had those three guys on again.
Yeah, I know.
Because I was like, that was magic.
I highlighted a lot more like guests, and I put Damasio, David Ranis, I put Courtney, which are all people we talked about already, but they killed it like every time they were on for sure.
For sure. It just, again, and I was like excited to be back, and it was like, cool, that's the first one out, and it was so funny. Number 35, right? This is September 9th, 2018. Bradley Adams was a guy on. It was a huge get. He's 2 years older than me. I knew people that knew him, and I reached out to him. And this is the guy who ended up he was a motorcyclist. He worked for, I forget which company, which magazine, but he was a journalist as a motorcyclist journalist.
Yeah.
So this guy was flying all over the world to do like the new bike tests. He would write all the reviews and stuff. So this guy used to do amateur road racing. I was so stoked to talk to this guy. I mean, he's got videos on YouTube of like, hey, we're doing the Superbike shootout for this year for Cycle World, like stuff like that. And it was just really cool. And I totally fucked up on this interview.
Oh,
I
really?
did not know how to do it because, okay, behind the scenes, I was excited. I didn't know how to, and I did it to kind of compare it to, I did an episode with a gentleman that has vintage BMWs not too long ago, and that one went really well.
Mm-hmm.
This one went really poorly in the sense of I really like motorcycles, and I could talk forever about them, and I'm super knowledgeable about it, and I was so excited to talk to him about it. But this isn't a motorcycle podcast, and that would just go over everybody's heads. Like, we can get nerded out, and I know he was know more than I did. But so I was really excited because he's ridden everything, for one. Like, he's the guy that tests them all for the magazine. So I was like, God, this guy really knows everything. He's raced. But I didn't know how to balance that, like, keep it super general but still interesting, because I don't do a motorcycle podcast. And also, that's what he did, and he recently, or not too long before, he had switched jobs from a journalist and working for basically, it's some kind of like PR company, and they were working with Honda. So I was kind of like, I wanted to talk about all these different companies and different bikes, but I knew we weren't going to be able to like talk bad about Honda, and he wasn't going to really say anything bad about any bike. And so in a combination of like him not being a journalist where he can just like tell all of his experiences, I didn't know how to balance that, because now he's like a PR company for Honda. So he's not going to say good things about the other brands, really. Yeah. And he's not going to say anything bad about Honda. So I was like, I didn't know how to balance that. And then I also didn't know how to balance, like, to not just nerd out, you know? Yeah. And it was totally flat. And I just remember being embarrassed. I was like, man, because I didn't know the guy. He came over, the sweetest guy, like, totally rad dude. I have nothing but respect for the guy. And I just totally fell flat. I was like excited to get him. And I was like embarrassed. I was like, dude, that's like, I get this guy on, and like, he's probably like, oh, I did some shitty podcast. And I remember seeing some guy comment on it, on like something that I posted. This guy's like, dude, you did this? Like, you didn't tell me. And he didn't even respond. So I was like, he's not even telling people that he went on it, because he was probably like, yeah, I did this thing and it didn't go well, or you know, I'm not really.
Totally in your own head.
Probably. But I just remember, I was like,
not what happened.
I was just like, dude, it fell flat. I remember I was like, I did not prepare, and I didn't know how to do it. And I just was like embarrassed about it.
I think me and you relate a lot, because we're definitely our own worst critic. So when you're seeing that comment, your mind's wandering, saying this is exactly what happened, when guaranteed that is not how that played out.
Probably.
It's probably just one of his like buddies that he hasn't talked to in a long time. Like, what? You were on a podcast? Like, dude, I didn't know that.
The way I thought about it, let's say it would be a 10, right, of how it came out in my head. I'd say it came out as like a 3 or a 4, like a 3. Like, I just really just did not bring my A game. And he was like, he was great, but I just didn't have, you know, like I said, it was like super general, because I didn't know how to like not nerd out, and I just didn't know how to do the interview. And I was like, man, that's a missed opportunity, and I was bummed.
If they were all 10s though, then the 10s wouldn't stand out.
Yeah, you might be hard on that episode though too, because you love motorcycles.
Yeah,
like you that's something you love to talk about. Like, I know you, and you
Right.
love to just anyone who can chit chat with you. So you
Right.
probably should have just nerded out. It's if it wasn't for everyone, it would have been a niche episode that at least you would have been like happy with.
For sure. It was that, and then also I didn't know how to navigate because he's a PR guy, so he was kind of like
that's tough.
You're tippy toeing around.
right.
Things.
He was kind of
Yeah.
politically correct. You know
Yep,
what I mean?
yep.
So it was. Sorry, my computer's tripping out. There it goes. Okay. It was interesting, and I just feel like it didn't come out how I liked. 39, October 26th, 2018. The only reason it was my cousin Susan and Paula. They had a YouTube channel. It was called the Babushka Sisters, where they would
Oh yeah. I remember
yeah.
that one.
they would come in and they would do like thrift furniture flips and stuff like that.
Oh, okay, I remember this one now.
And the reason why I brought that up, it was a cool episode. I really enjoyed having them on. And they did a YouTube episode, and I gave them a couple pieces of furniture and, blah, blah, blah. But that was the end of that run. I went from 33 to 39. And that was because I hadn't bought this computer that I have now, so I was still using this laptop that's in front of me, and I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do video. It was burning me out bad, right? And I've talked about it, and it was impossible with this old computer.
Yeah.
Impossible.
Yeah.
And I just, I really tried. So like I said, quick little spurt. I did 1 through 32 the first run, and then now I just did 33 through 39. Yeah. And there'll be a couple more spurts before I get into the run that I'm doing now. Okay. Number 40. So I ended that last one at 39. That was October of 2018. It came back in January of 2019. So this is number 40. And right away I went Eric and Damasio. I'm sure I probably invited David. He just couldn't come on for some reason.
Gas.
Right. What?
I do
Gas
remember that
money.
story. Yeah.
No, that was
I know.
that
I'm
was
just
more
kidding.
recent, but
He
that
probably-
was, yeah. But I was like, all right, I'm gonna try to start with what worked last time. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
And I had these guys on, and it was I remember it wasn't funny. The last one was hilarious. This one wasn't really funny. However, it was a deeper, and it was just a great conversation. So I remember I was like, dude, this is a solid episode, but it's not funny, but it's solid.
Yeah, but one of them was talking about getting back into real estate recently.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
Okay.
Eric.
Okay. Yeah. So it was a good episode.
This is where he was talking about like he was getting over being an alcoholic and being in Texas and like really like turning his life around. It was a great show, and it was interesting because I had him on. I was like, cool, I'm gonna have him on. It'll be another hilarious episode. And it wasn't that at all, but it was still great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that what's great about this though?
It is.
It is.
There's been a lot of these episodes where I'm like, it's gonna be this, and it turns out into totally something, but it's still great.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's definitely something I've had to learn of. Like you have to just kind of roll with it.
Mhm.
And something I've learned of if you sometimes you're like it'll be going in a different unexpected avenue, and you're just like trying to correct it, and you end up ruining it because it's not organic. It's like it was going to be organically this different thing that was it's all
Which
about
is still
in the-
okay. Yeah.
It's also confidence, and you just experience. You like I know when a good episode's happening in the moment.
Uh-huh.
Right. So that's definitely one that happened. On this same, I guess not. Let me see here. That was January 28th. So I think I did like 2 episodes and then stopped because 42 is what I have next, and it's in March, right? So the other one was in January. Now we're in March. So I only did like 2 episodes and then stopped again. 42, I came back. This was with yourself, Will, your dad, Bill Small,
Oh,
and
yeah.
Carl Edwards.
That was YouTube again.
Bill.
Yeah, that was YouTube again.
Mhm.
So this was March 13th, 2019. Here's what I really wrote down is that solid episode, but could have been great. And I remember that I had guests on that had all the experience, and we basically talked about. So I had Will to kind of be with me as far as younger generation.
Although I only said like 10 words the
You-
whole episode.
yeah, right. You've definitely, you've definitely blossomed on this show. But so then I had your dad, and I had another gentleman, Carl Edwards, who I grew up next to, that are just 2 titans of their industry in construction. And the whole show was just about work. And at the time, I was really going through it as far as not liking what I was doing, and kind of in a peaks and valleys. I was in a valley there. And we were talking about just different generations in the work picture and stuff like that. And it was a great, solid show. But I just remember thinking I was underprepared, and I didn't take full advantage. I remember because a lot of people were like, I really enjoyed that episode, but I'm thinking, man, it was a 7 or an 8, and I could have been a 10 if I brought my game. So I just remember the guests really brought it, and I didn't live up to the hype. But it's a solid episode. Okay, number 43, and it stopped with that episode again.
Sorry, I'm trying to remember which one. Okay, no, we got a little while.
Okay.
Because there's one that really stood out to me, and I don't want to miss it.
Okay. So 43 is now. So that was in March that we did before. Now we're in October. So I took another break. 43, and this was, I think I stopped doing YouTube. So this was just audio again.
Yeah.
But this is now in October. So I took a break from March to October. October 13th, 2019. So when I had Chris Ybarra and Ariana Perez on.
Oh, yeah.
The first one back, great episode. I remember I was like, I'm going to come back. And I hadn't had these people on. I rarely get to see him. This was my first time meeting Chris's girlfriend. And it just flowed extremely well. And it was all about them. It had nothing to do with me, their story. They both had a lot to say. And it was just a fantastic episode. And I remember I was like, cool, back on a good note. And I was really proud of it. 46 is December 15th, 2019. This was an interesting one because I had these three gentlemen, James Buxton, John Reyes, and Ross Castro. At this point, I was working at the stadium. I hadn't really, I was a foreman, but I was just starting. So these three guys are work friends that worked out there at the stadium.
Okay.
And I literally just wrote, it was fun. It was super fun. I
Uh-huh.
had these guys on, and I just remember thinking this was so much fun. Everybody that I worked with listened to it, and it was hilarious. And it was just so much fun, and I even wrote this, I needed that. Like, I needed just a fun episode, and that happened because I was, stressed out because I was starting to become a foreman. And then I had these guys on again from work, so it's kind of like being that vulnerable of like letting work into what kind of my little passion project here in my bedroom, and it was hilarious.
That sounded awkward, buddy, when we got it.
I meant every word.
I think I remember if this is the right one where you said like the next day, people like when it came out that a lot of people worked to listen to it. And it was like it really did it for you. That
Didn't you say like the superintendent like had it on in there or something like that?
Yeah, it was
like the break room or something.
It was great.
It was pretty funny too.
It was a lot
if I
of it.
remember correctly.
Yeah, no, it was good. It was because it was those are the guys that we were all just construction bust balls.
Yeah.
And I sold it really well on that episode. Like I was trying to figure out. I think thinking back, the way I kind of structured it, because I was like, what are we going to talk about? Like nobody's going to, we could tell construction stories, but nobody really gives a fuck. And I wrote because it's so ball busting between like that's the relationship with most people from work.
Yeah.
I wrote it as like, who do you think would be the best at this? And so they were all like subjective, but it was all like, you were like, I'd be the fucking best at that. Like, fuck you, like I would be the best. So it was nothing but that. And I remember, so it was it created a lot of ball busting.
Yeah.
It was funny.
Yep.
And it was a good time, which is exactly what I needed. So that was in December of 2019. Didn't put out another one until June of the next year in 2020, which would be pretty close.
Which, that was post-COVID at that point.
Correct. Into COVID. I took some time off. I had been back to work. So, into that summer. And this was kind of towards the end of me being a foreman and me having all the stress in the world. But number 47, another solo show. And this one was probably the most, I don't want to say the most vulnerable, but the darkest show I've ever had. And it's simply called The Brilliant Gift of Laughter. Do you guys remember that one?
Yep.
I read a passage that I had. It was like 3 paragraphs from when I was the most depressed, still to this day I've been in my life, when I was like 23, 24. The first 2 paragraphs, extremely dark. And I remember I just didn't hold back. And I think I showed it to my dad and not many other people. And then here I was saying it on a podcast.
Yep.
And that was coming off of me having all the stress, kind of realizing like, all right, to go and keep working your way up, like, all right, finish the apprenticeship and then you're a journeyman for like a month and then you're a foreman, you're running all this work. And then to realize like, I want to take a step back and not be a foreman. Like to come to grips with like, I want to take a step back in my career is kind of difficult to deal with. You know what I mean? And I was dealing with that. Dealing with all the stress of my job, which was coming to an end. The COVID was going crazy. I was in a relationship that was not going well at all. And, which, ended up ending like later that fall. But so that was and this show, right? So that was ultimately, like I said, it was about my depression and anger and just not being content. But at the very end of it, and I remember I wrote it Christmas Day of that year. I wrote it like a week or 2 after I wrote the first 2 negative paragraphs. But it was all about, the gift of laughter and me wanting to find and having that yearning for making individuals laugh. But so a very, very deep episode. But I've had so many individuals, both not on construction sites and grown men, come up to me and be like, hey, man, like big macho dudes. Like not a whole lot of people talk about that stuff, and I could really relate. Thanks for putting that out there.
Yeah.
Which is
That's
all
the one that I was
validation.
talking about earlier. Yeah.
I'm talking like both apprentices to management. So it's very vulnerable to put that out there, but all of that makes it worth it.
Yeah, because most guys, we hold that stuff in.
Yeah.
So when someone comes out and actually says, okay, we have all felt that way at some point.
Yep.
So to hear someone say it and be like, dude, I've definitely been there.
Yes.
Definitely been
And I just felt like it was a great balanced and structured episode too, because I had that data, I had that, the structure of just reading it, and I felt like I broke it down really well, and I really liked the way it came out.
You didn't say I don't think once in that whole episode.
Yeah, I was hard the whole time too.
Yeah. Like you crushed that one. That was a good one.
Yeah, that's me ruining it with humor. But like,
Love it.
yeah.
Good thing it wasn't a YouTube, right?
Yeah,
It was just
Yeah, I wasn't wearing pants. That's why it really came out.
You're still not, but
I'm wearing pants, everybody. But, okay, so that was number 47. 48 I did with another buddy, and then 49, which is what I have written down here. So that 47, that really deep show, that was in June. In August, I was officially not a foreman anymore. August, number 49 was Nicholas Warnicki. This is the start of the run that I'm still on.
Nice.
Really?
Yep.
Nice.
Right?
yeah, this run's been
So
really
the first
good.
one I went to 32. Now I'm at over 50.
Nice.
Okay.
Damn.
So
Okay.
There's no stopping you now.
end of August 2020, number 49, Nicholas Warnicki. And this is a huge line in the sand because this was me saying, all right, I'm taking a step back in my career. And ultimately, also, kind of summer of 2019, right before I became a foreman, because I went from apprentice basically to foreman. I worked like a month until the job kind of kicked off as a J-Dub.
Mm-hmm.
But I went and took that huge 5-week vacation. I visited Montana, I visited Oregon, and I remember thinking, I was like, I'm moving out of California. And I was like, all right, cool. I'm going to do this job for about a year as a foreman. I'm going to learn a ton. That way when I move out, I'll be like, hey, I've been a foreman at the stadium. I know how to do that. I'm going to save a ton of money. And then 2020 of that summer, I'm moving out of California. That was my plan.
Mm-hmm.
But by the time that I was done, or by the time that 2020 summer came, with all the stress and just all the life, I realized still need to put a proper effort into doing the podcast, and yada yada yada, and that kind of dream, and that's like I said, I stepped back.
Mm-hmm.
So this was that run, right? The end of summer of 2020 was the run I'm still on of all right, I'm gonna step back. I need to give it a proper effort before I say goodbye to it.
Yep,
and this is what I'm on. And as far as the line in the sand point that I'm trying to make is, there's a level of quality that's upped from this point on, I would say. Some of the episodes that we talked about earlier on, when I was like, it didn't really go well, and yet I still put it out. There's episodes, a few, very few, but I don't feel like I liked them. They weren't up to my standards. I didn't put them out. You know what I mean? I would say, hey, we'll get you back on again. It just something clicked. I was off, or the other person was off. I go, dude, I know you're great. We'll get you back on.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you invested in this stuff more too, no?
The table's the same. I hadn't started doing YouTube yet. YouTube still is fairly recent because I bought that huge, spent $3,000 on a computer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
So that was after this still.
oh yeah.
Oh,
This is summer of 2020. I bought the computer a couple months ago. But this, I remember it went really well, and so this is the line in the sand of all right, I'm really gonna go in, and if it's gonna work, it's gonna work. But this is gonna be if I do move, I know I gave it a try.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the line in the sand. And also, me as a person, right? I had just been a foreman where I ran $7.5 million of work at the stadium. I've been through that. I've had a relationship that was well and then not well. That was over a year. I've grown a lot as a person.
Mm-hmm.
So it was also me coming back, firing on all cylinders.
Yeah.
And with the attitude of all right,
You're ready.
I'm doing this or I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? And so 49, there's definitely an uptick in quality, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of interesting. It was hard to write stuff down because it was, like I said, there was a new form of quality that I brought. And so I was like, some of them earlier on, I was like, all right, this one was great. And then I'd skip a couple and then this one was great. Where it was every episode, I was like, I really like that one. I really like that one. But I didn't have the time to write down every single episode.
Yeah, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But I liked every single one. So I'll jump to number 54.
You actually skipped one that I had on here.
What do you got?
I got number 52 with Dalton and
Yep.
yeah.
Almost wrote
Jacob
that one.
McBride.
Yeah.
That one I really liked because I'm not gonna say I know Dalton because I haven't talked to him since like high school, but I knew Dalton and I had no idea about like what had happened after. So it was like I had this idea of him, and then all of a sudden I was like flipping the page and like it was like reading a book because like the next page would turn and you're like, oh shit, that happened to him. And then it was like another, and like you did really well of just like, because it's not that he's a shy person, but you did really well, like, you know, kind of walking through that adventure of his life with him, and it wasn't like you were prying information. It felt very organic, you know, and
Right.
there was a lot going on and a lot that he probably like wouldn't tell anyone, you know.
Right. It was, to kind of give you the cliff notes for those that haven't listened to it, Dalton's this guy, and I also had this other friend that I've known for a long time, Jacob McBride, who's also separately friends with Dalton, so that was a cool interaction. But Dalton is the guy that in high school that worked for his grandfather. He had this huge business, and it was kind of known like that's going to be Dalton's one day. He didn't go to college, like he was set, you know what I mean? His grandpa passed away like pretty soon after high school, and then he got it. So it was kind of this whole thing of like, Dalton is set, and he is set. And then he had a lot of like personal setbacks because he kind of was growing through that, drugs, things like that, addiction, personally, and now he's overcome that. And it was just a great story.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's kind of, I think, where you're coming off of is like everybody kind of knew the cliff notes, but not. He was always very like, I'm not going to tell you how much I make. I'm not going to tell you this. I mean, he talked about he blew like $100,000 cash on drugs like in a year or whatever. Like,
right.
Which I didn't know it was that bad. You know what I mean? And it was great because I knew how he was from prior interactions of like he doesn't really like to tell all that stuff because he's kind of that old school gentleman of like you don't ask how much I make, you don't need to know, but he really opened up and it was a good story. Especially
and it was thanks to you. It was like I said, like
super organic.
He wouldn't tell anyone, you know.
You made him feel comfortable,
even though
in
he
the
kind of did
conversation.
because it's recorded. But you know, like
I felt really good because also after that show when it came out, he had a lot of family that listened to it, and he said that they all really liked it, and he was like pumped on it. He's like, that came out exactly how I thought it was going to come out. He's like, thanks, man.
Yep,
and I was really stoked about that.
Yeah.
I almost wrote that one down, and I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah, I like that one a lot too. I was a little tripped because he was my neighbor at the time.
Yeah,
like
right.
Oh, wow.
right before, like, and then I moved away, and then I guess all that stuff kind of went down. But last I had heard, he was telling me how great everything's going and shouldering all that stuff.
yeah,
You know, from the business and not really being honest about it, and so it's crazy. It's good to hear that he's doing good now.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking, net worth in the millions, and he just gets inherited this at like 20 or 21 or whatever he was when his grandfather passed away. And like I said, he had a lot of different things he had to overcome personally and learn the business, but then he's also killing it. He's making more money now than when his grandpa was running it.
Yeah, doing something
for him.
pretty awesome
Good for
too.
him.
Yeah, so it's a great story. Number 52, is that what that was?
52.
Check that out if you haven't. Number 54, I just have Oh Jesus Christ.
Oh yeah,
That was Jeff, Will,
The
and then
bachelor
Jeff's brother
party.
Josh.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was basically Las Vegas for Will's bachelor thing, and it's another fun story with friends. It's just it's fucking hilarious. You got
It
to
was
check it out.
great weekend.
Yeah, Cody was there. Cody,
Yes, it was.
best man, ran it, but it was just hilarious. You got to check it out.
Oh Jesus Christ!
That's
Oh, Jesus Christ, it's my favorite Josh story for sure.
it's great. Yeah, Josh. Me hearing Josh from the other room. Me seeing him just walk up like a zombie because he's hammered. I thought he was asleep, and he just kind of shuffles into the hotel restroom, and I just hear him say, before he throws up, "Oh, Jesus Christ," and then just starts yakking. It made me laugh. Not like throws up and goes, "Oh, Jesus." Like says it preemptively because he knows it's coming.
Yeah.
But again, it's hilarious Vegas stories. Really well done, and it was just a fun episode.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It was a good one.
November 2nd, number 59, 2020. This one, I don't know if you guys will remember it, but Victor Laviaga, Success or Not, is about 18 inches. Do you guys remember this one?
Mm-hmm.
I don't actually.
Yeah, remind me. Like when you're talking about it, then I'm like, oh, okay, I do remember this one.
Okay, so here's the backstory of this show. Victor, I know this guy. You grew up with kids that go to the same elementary school and then junior high and then high school. This kid, Anthony Laviaga, is who I knew, and his father is Victor Laviaga. So I hadn't seen them in forever. I hadn't really kept touch really since high school. but like I said, I've been to his house a million times as a kid and blah, blah, blah. So his dad was a firefighter. And his dad's always been a really sweet guy. I didn't know how he was going to be on a podcast, kind of an old school guy. So I didn't know how he was going to come off, especially just him in the room, if it was going to really sell. But I had him on, and I was surprised that he was like all about it. He's like, cool. Like, kind of had to like tell him like, this is what the podcast is going to be. He had to explain the podcast situation to him. But he came on, and it was one of the best interviews I've ever done. I was so inspired. I remember, we got done, and it was a work night, right? So I had to work up. I was up early, and I had to be up early the next day. And I was trying to run like this 3-mile loop quite a bit at the time through the neighborhoods right outside my apartment complex. And I ran the fastest 3 miles that I've ever run after that interview because I was just so inspired.
So hyped, yeah.
So hyped. It's just a great story of a guy, trying to get a job and just not letting up, and then gets the job, and then he, almost died from cancer. It's inspiring. That I know I've said that over and over again, but that's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I said, I don't run, especially now, and I ran the fastest I've ever ran after doing that episode.
I'll have to listen to that. For some reason I don't remember it, and I feel like maybe I just didn't listen to that one, but I'll have to definitely plug that one in for the car ride home at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a really good one.
It just, and it's also because I didn't know. I was like, this is probably going to be okay. It just blew me away. Blew my expectations away.
Yeah.
Felt like I was on point. And I just, dude, I love the guy even more now. You know what I mean?
Yep, I bet.
Number 63, December 13th, 2020. This was Courtney Kindig and Will again. I tend to have you two on when it's something with girls because it's like you guys are a great guy-girl combo. This is the new juice on an old Tinder stick.
They bounce off each other well, though.
They do.
Yeah.
And this was so great because this was the story of in November, right before Thanksgiving of that year, I had COVID, so I had 2 weeks off. Didn't put out any episodes. This is where just in the middle of the night, this woman that I dated like 3 years prior sent me this fucking monster of a text.
Oh, yeah, I do remember this
saying about how fucking great I am and how she loves the podcast. And like,
yeah, I do remember this
just
one.
the great. I was so like, just podcast material just falling in my lap.
Yeah.
And the joke of like, because it came at like 12:30 at night, so I was like, is she drunk? But it was super well written.
Yeah,
I was like, she wasn't sloppy.
Yeah.
And like, and I had already been in quarantine for like a week and a half, so I was eating nothing but like DiGiorno's pizza and burritos and shit. And so like the story of like me rolling over in bed, like I just went like in my underwear, no shirt, my fucking gut hanging out, rolling over to like read the text. You're doing like the old person squint, and it's like bright in your face.
Yeah.
So when I rolled over, I looked like the guy from 90 Day Fiance.
Yeah.
I
remember you said that.
Yeah. After I read this story, that's just this like hype machine. I look like Brad Pitt in Fight Club. Like, but it was a great story. It was a combination between that and then I went riding for Thanksgiving with a bunch of people. And an old like 50-something year old
that's a
woman
good story too.
basically tried to rape me, and I had to tell her to fuck off. And so it was just, it's a great episode.
Yeah.
It's really funny.
I still think the follow-up on that one was funny too.
Yeah.
Because you asked the girl that sent you that, oh, did you listen to the podcast?
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah.
And she's like, yeah. And then she sent you a text like, one was to me. She obviously didn't like my take on it because one was to me and it was like,
I heard this.
It was like to Will, I was not drunk.
Yeah.
To Courtney, I think we'd be the greatest friends. You're an awesome, genuine human being. And I was just like, well, she did not like where I was going.
Well, because if I remember right, she had a boyfriend, right?
She did, yeah.
And we were all like, it's kind of not something that would be puff even though she didn't mean it that way.
She didn't.
So now knowing that, like, everyone can see her take.
So so it was this whole puff piece to me sent in the middle of the night, stroking me off, and it was just like, but also
He's definitely not helping.
I mean, well, that was one of the angles that we had to talk about. Is the fact she told me she's like, and I am still dating the guy because we went on like a few great dates and it was going really well, and then she's like, hey, I'm going back to the guy that we just broke up, and that's the guy that she's still with. And I hope they're happy and yada yada. But like, it was just an interesting. She's like, yeah, she tells me she has a boyfriend, but then she was also writing me in the middle of the night. Yeah. Sending pigeon letters that I'm just like the fucking coolest guy in the world.
Like now looking back, it's that genuine.
I knew that it was genuine because she wrote it really well. But of course, I'm going to talk about all.
The scenario. No, the scenario. I mean, doesn't look good.
It was
But now I think going back, she seemed very genuine.
It was
especially
cool.
with the follow up and
Yes.
telling Will he's a dick.
The whole episode
Yeah.
was basically
It was great.
an opinion piece of
For sure.
hypothetically what we thought was going on.
Yeah. I mean, dude,
That was so funny.
I mean, she didn't follow me on Facebook or nothing. Like, she had to find me, remember the name of the podcast 3 years later to listen
Yeah.
again, and then write me this whole thing. And it was just cool. 'Cause, I mean, to get that, and then she listened to the show when it came out, and then like give me her review again. It was just super fun.
Yeah.
And
that was funny.
it's a super fun and funny episode.
Yep.
Okay, so that was December. That was 63, December 13th of 2020. Number 65. This was my first. It was another solo show. A look back on 2020.
Oh yeah.
December 27th, 2020 is when this episode came out. And I just literally have written big learning experience. This was my first like year in review.
Mm-hmm.
It did really well numbers wise, and I just remember it was my first experience of like look back at your whole year and write down what you learned.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So there was that aspect that forced me to do that, and another solo show that I feel like probably 8 out of 10, 7.5 as far as like how I think I told the story.
Mm-hmm.
But it went really well. I really enjoyed the show, and I did another look back on 2021 like 2 weeks ago because it forced me to learn. You know what I mean? It's literally that episode is just as much for me as it is for everybody listening.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
You know. Okay. Number 68. This is a big one.
Yeah.
This is.
I got that one down.
Do you? Cool.
I really like this one. Sorry, go ahead.
This was one of my. Sorry, were you gonna say something?
No, I'm
I'm
sure.
curious.
I think
Which one is
we're
it?
both like, which one is this?
This is January 18th, 2021, beginning of the year. This is Big John.
Oh, okay.
So this is a gentleman that I knew from Second Call. Big time guy that went to prison, was selling drugs when he was younger, total gangbanger.
Right.
Came out, helped me get into the apprenticeship without even knowing. I didn't know him. Anyways, this was a great interview, back and forth, serious show, but great flow. I mean, you want to talk about 2 hours going by like that, and it was all about the black community and kind of what's going on with that, and talking about changing generations. You know what I mean? Being there, being a man, being there for your. It was just fantastic show.
It was inspirational and
Yes.
motivating. Just, I mean, the guy alone. I mean, sounds like a great guy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know you, Big John, but you sound like a good person. Keep up what you're doing, and the way you guys bounce back and forth.
It's fantastic.
The conversation, like as a listener, 2 hours went by, and it was like, wow. That I mean,
Right.
you're craving for more at the end of it. So it was a good one.
I put that up against anybody's podcast.
Yeah,
Like,
I would agree.
fucking
Yeah.
listen to
I
anybody.
would agree.
Mm-hmm.
I was one of my best for sure. Firing on all cylinders on myself and the guy. I kind of it was pretty quickly in. I kind of realized how to bring it out of him. I knew he was going to be able to come out with stuff, but then I was also it's kind of weird. Like you can have a guest that's like knows how to just answer a question and knows how to just like tell their story, but then there's another layer to that of like kind of
Bringing out the details and
yeah, but it's like okay, somebody asked me like, can you tell the story of the accident of where you crashed your motorcycle and we're off? It's like, okay, I know how to tell the story very well, but then somebody that's listening can like really interject and like maybe invite you to think about things you haven't thought about.
Yep.
And you know what I mean? So it was just a great show, and like I said, super proud of it.
I love that one. Yep,
Yeah.
that's a good one.
And this guy also, you want to talk about bringing work in, huge in my union and like a ginormous superintendent for one of the biggest shops nationwide. Like this guy is a big deal. Okay.
Big John.
Right. Big black dude, Big John. And I still see him when I go to Second Call. I've been going the last couple weeks. Fantastic dude. Still inspires me to this day.
I kind of forgot about that episode. I'm not gonna lie, but I do remember it being really good.
Sure. Yeah, and I just talked about this on the look back on 2021. If community that adds and multiplies, right?
Yeah.
The power of I. Don't say like, oh yeah, when you do this, it's like no, when I do this. You
Yeah.
own that. You own that. What you're talking about. Anyways, great
Accountability.
for sure. Number 73, February 2021. Same day, different mindset. This was one of the. I wrote down this one because it's a huge line in the sand of me trying to use this podcast as a tool. This episode was all about me having a super shitty day. I was really depressed at the time. And I was like, I'm going to make a show, and how can I learn about this? And I just, exactly what the title says, same day, different mindset. It was a solo episode. And it was me being vulnerable and telling all the whole episode or the whole day that I had, and it was like the negative connotation that I had when I went through the day, and I was like, all right, let's walk back and literally do the exact same day with a different mindset. And I thought it was a good episode.
Yeah, it was.
It was. Because you went from like your alarm clock going off to like going to sleep, basically.
The whole entire day.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it was just like a Tuesday. It wasn't like some crazy like accident where it was like me telling the story. It
Right.
was just another day, but two different mindsets. And it was definitely a, like I said, that's one that was for me as well for everybody else. Number 74, March 7th. This is, I Remember When, is what it's called, another solo episode. I was really struggling and kind of being motivated for the podcast because I was really depressed. So, that, you got a couple back-to-back solo episodes, no guests on, me not really putting in the work to get new people on, and also me being introverted and being depressed and like not really wanting to talk to anybody and just doing solo episodes. And this was basically me talking about, I want to say just kind of, depression, and it kind of talked about, it was right before the accident, which I knew that the mindset I had was I was depressed, and I just talked about a few different things and kind of a few stories, but this was the last episode that I put out before this huge accident that I had, this huge motorcycle accident.
Well,
yeah, I think it was second to last.
Yeah, because you had
75.
75 was the night before the crash. Well, no, he didn't publish it. That's right.
I recorded number 75.
We recorded it before the crash, but he did it like 4 months later, released it, if I remember right.
Yeah, so I remember 75 definitely being before the accident. So,
Right. It was the night before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it didn't come out. That's right.
Correct. So
yes,
because I
right.
crashed on a Saturday, we recorded it Friday night for it to come out the following Monday. But I crashed on a Saturday. So it didn't come out until after. It came out like 4 months
I do remember that
later.
now.
Yeah.
And that's what I have, kind of 75, 76, mid-July 2021. So even though I still consider it the same run, I took 4 months off of the podcast because I was broken in 10 fucking different ways. And I had just no energy. But 75, 76, with you two, some of the best I've ever had.
Yeah, 76 to me was powerful.
Yeah.
Super powerful. I have it written down as the comeback. Because it's literally like you can see. I just remember having the conversation with you in 75, and even 4 months later, just like seeing the totally different person that we're talking to.
Yes.
Your mindset, you're just can't say it any other way. You were a totally different person.
I just recently talked about it in the look back on 2021 that the accident did, kind of an unexpected gift, because I was super depressed. And the night that we recorded before the accident, which would be number 75, we talked about me being super depressed.
Yeah.
But you could feel the warmth of me having just kind of family and you guys being around me. And it was a really great show, super vulnerable, but also not just a downer, but me just being honest and genuine.
No, it was. It was
just having you guys in the room, and that really came across, right? Having that community that adds and multiplies. So that, was recorded but didn't come out till 4 months later because I got hurt. And then, so you have that snapshot in time.
Yep.
Of me going through that. And so now the following week comes out and it's recorded more recently, and it's the same people on, both Will and Jeff, but now we're talking post-accident, and like you said, I was and how I've described
mental state was just
couldn't be higher on life.
Yeah, it just so polar opposites.
Yes.
I mean, it was we could just feel it, and it I think it was like a bonding moment for all of us as well in the room, having that conversation and then coming back like, wow, this is like, I think even Will, like during the other conversation, was like, man, like I'm just like getting jitters, like some of the things you were saying makes him feel so good.
You had the basis of the show being structured around this huge life-changing accident. So you had that story kind of chronologically kind of pushing the show forward, and then we would kind of talk about my mindset and how it kind of changed and how it, where I'm at today and then where we were at before, but still pushing forward with the accident and kind of where I was at in my recovery. Yeah. And then we also had just that snapshot of like, it's just a real blessing that, we had a great show right before when I was really in the dumps. And then we had this great show right after.
Agreed.
But totally different tones.
Really good contrast there.
Right. And it was great because it's like same people, completely different show.
Yeah.
4 months apart, recorded, but they came out week after week.
Both are really good.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So one little tidbit, and I don't want to ruin the moment here, but do you remember the secret that came out in 75?
I do.
I got that written down.
About me?
No, about the secret that you hadn't told Will about his girlfriend.
Yeah, dude.
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
One of Will's.
I just thought that was so funny. So funny.
Yeah, well, it was funny because I remember recording that, and then it was 4 months until it came out, and I forgot about it.
Yeah.
So when I listened
Oh,
to it,
so nice.
I was like, "Oh shit!"
Do you remember this? Did you listen?
Yeah.
Will had it to give you the cliff notes.
Yeah.
Will had this girlfriend. This is like 10 years prior.
Yeah.
And he was
it
dating
a
this
lot.
girl, and she was wearing these super tiny little shorts. And she kept jumping on top of him, and I was like, we were all in this tiny little room. And I just accidentally, like, totally saw her vag. And I didn't mean to see it, but then she kept doing it. And I wasn't, like, trying to, like, okay, here she comes. But,
You're like,
right, like, it wasn't.
But
when I
Will
did
didn't
see
know.
it-
Will didn't
I
know.
had no idea for 10 years.
Nobody.
That's what's so funny to me. Even like now thinking about the conversation.
I didn't tell anity for 10
Yeah.
years. And then so on podcast, on the same episode, we're talking about how bummed I am. I love the
Yeah.
It's so it literally is so comfortable.
yes.
You know.
Yeah.
The same episode, I'm like, hey, buddy, your ex-girlfriend way back when? I totally saw her vag.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow. And I'm like, and I looked more than once. Yeah.
Oh man.
It was just, anyways, it was, and
Yeah.
I don't get the idea, and I know people know what I mean.
No,
I'm not like out here
if-
looking to
No,
scam.
no.
Listen to
Yeah.
it, and it comes
It's a
across
funny story.
Funny.
Yeah.
It was just a funny story.
Yeah.
But yeah, so-
Kept that to yourself too for 10 years.
Well, I wasn't gonna be like.
How do you bring that up? This
Hey,
is the
man.
avenue to bring that up.
The thing was, I'm glad that I remembered it
Yeah.
because, like,
Oh, me too.
obviously in the moment I was, because it was like not just us three hanging out, it was like a bunch of people hanging out in a tiny little room. So I wasn't gonna be like, everybody stop.
Yeah.
I just witnessed. You know what I mean? Like,
I declare.
right. And then just, I don't know, I didn't see her a week or two, and I just forgot about it, you
Yeah.
know? And then, but I remembered it 10 years later, and I was like, I gotta talk to him about this.
Great story.
But it just, yeah, it
Great
was
story.
fun.
It was funny.
The way it came about.
I love
yeah,
how
it was
after you're like, I hope we could still be friends.
Oh man.
Because I remember the way I brought it. I was like, I've never told anybody. Will just
Yeah,
like,
that's
please
so-
still be friends with me. Like I haven't told you. So you're probably thinking like,
I was like, well, what's
does
going
my
on here?
wife- Did my wife cheat on me?
Yeah,
Or,
like,
I'm
What
like
happened
anxious
here?
being in the room. Like, what's about to be said or no? I don't want to be part of this.
I was too.
The build-up was so
That's
great.
like I
The build-up was so great.
it was fun.
Sorry, I had to share that because that one.
No,
stood out to me.
you're right.
Yep.
Those two shows.
That was how we
Yeah.
kicked off that episode.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the very.
That was
beginning?
Yeah.
Great show.
Opening.
Yep.
So the next one I have is number 80, August 23rd, 2021. So my buddy Stephen Murphy, titled "Do You Have a Mask?" This was a high watermark for me in the sense of like we're just going to talk about life and just funny stories that's going on right now. But it was just great conversation.
Yeah.
He's a huge podcast listener, and so he loves like Joe Rogan. He listens to a bunch of different guys.
Yeah.
And he came on, and he was like super like, I don't like my voice. I don't know if I'm going to be able to talk. But it was just easy. We went for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, something like that. And he was like, we could have done another 2 hours, no problem. And it was just great. Like it's just great. It was, there was no super headline topic, but it was just a great podcast.
Yeah.
So
Good
that's-
discussion.
Right, like
Yeah.
of just life. So that was a great, and stories and stuff like that. So that's kind of the high water mark I have for him. 83 September 2021. Stash Cam. This is the guy with the vintage BMWs, and this is the big difference that I had. Because it was kind of his story. He has a YouTube channel where he has vintage BMWs, and then I knew we were going to talk about the car industry because I can totally nerd out about that. And we kind of touched on it earlier when I had that gentleman Bradley Adams talking about motorcycles, where I totally didn't pull it off. So obviously this is cars, but I just remember thinking that I've had a lot of people tell a lot of different individuals like, I don't care about cars at all, but I love that episode.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's such a win.
That's what I well, I don't, it's not that I don't care about cars. I just know nothing about them. But I listened to that the whole way through, and you guys got technical, but I was still like super interested,
And I realize in kind of full frontal, this is one out of for sure two, probably maybe three guys that show up. I didn't know him beforehand, other than messaging a little bit on Instagram. He showed up and he told me afterwards, he's like, yeah, man, I showed up and I smoked weed because I was nervous. And he's like, I had to kind of get in the mood a little bit. So if you listen back to it, it's like he got better as the show came. And that's frustrating for me. Sometimes it's like, dude, killing me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I couldn't tell.
Right. But I didn't really notice in the moment.
Yeah.
After he said that, I don't know if it's because now it's in my head.
Yeah.
But there's definitely another episode for sure, and I won't reveal who it was, but kind of bombed. And I found out later he smoked a ton of weed before he came on, and he bombed.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, dude, fuck, man.
Yeah.
But that was early days. But anyway, so this guy came on. I was just super stoked. And I realized right away, I was like, this is going to be a car guy. And so I was like kind of getting nerdy into it, but still keeping it broad paint strokes so everybody can understand it. And I was already kind of realizing, like, he's never thought about this stuff. Like these takes on the industry and Tesla and autopilot and stuff like that. And so I realized right away, it was kind of interesting. I was like, oh, I got to dumb it down for him. But I was still, so I had to kind of play that in the moment. And, it was an interesting. I thought I was going to be able to bring up a topic and he would have tons of opinions about it, and it wasn't like that at all. I would bring up topics and then I would talk about it a lot, and he would have some opinions, but
you can tell he has a really focused love for what he's doing.
For sure.
Yeah,
and I
Definitely.
also realized that if I wanted to do a car podcast, I could probably do that too. I articulated my thoughts really well.
Yeah.
Number 89, October of 2021. This was back to doing video. This is Nathan Brown, who is a senior vice president of a basically wealth management firm. He's actually my own personal.
Oh yeah. I really like that
financial
one.
advisor.
Yep.
And it was just this is the first one I did, kind of online via what's called Squadcast. This is probably the best one I did with that. And it was
I wouldn't say that, but okay.
he listens to these, so sorry, Nathan. But
no, but
No,
nothing against. Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say.
We'll get to there. But this was it was a really good episode. I knew it was going to be a great episode because this gentleman, obviously I know him because he manages my finance. He's actually dabbled in the podcast field as well. I've heard him. He's just really great at selling himself. He knows how to talk, super articulate, knows the material very well. And I knew it was one of those professional guys that I can just have on and I can be like, what do you think about this? And he's going to be able to tell a great 5-minute story about it or his thoughts.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what it was. You could tell he's just a top tier guest. So that made it really easy on me. And I felt like I had the right questions and the right takes. And it was just a great interview.
Yeah.
And it was the first one back on YouTube.
Yeah. So one word that you didn't use on there in that description was passion. That dude was passionate
for sure.
when he was talking. And that's what drew me in the whole time. Because, like, when you think about it, you're talking about finances. And you're like, well, I don't know.
It's boring.
It could be boring. It could be boring.
Topic.
But he brought that to life, and he was passionate about it, and like, had energy. And I was like, dude, this is awesome. And he had good anecdote, like, stories and stuff like that.
Right, real life stories to numbers.
Yeah,
it could have been a 55-year-old guy go, well, see, it's kind of interesting when you open up a Roth IRA. This is the coolest thing, I swear. You know what I mean? It could have been a very boring, dry talk about money.
He made it intriguing. It was a good topic,
And that had one of, like, the funniest one-lines that you've thrown out on there. And it's actually your dad's, but about the Dave Ramsey.
Oh, right. It's my mom's hall pass.
Hall pass.
Dave Ramsey, who's a financial advisor guy. Who's like this husky, like middle of the country guy, but he's just like the biggest podcaster. And,
dude, that one I was like crying laughing when I watched that one.
It's my mom's hall pass.
That's so good.
It's valid. Like, she loves that. She's like, talk to me about mutual funds. But give myself the chili willies there.
Video's huge too. Don't understate that. I know it's a lot of work for you, but I think the quality is great and it's easier to share too.
The marketing is really
to pass it out.
Yeah. So that was right. That was a lot invested. That was the first episode, right? I spent $3,000 on a computer and even more time. It's a huge time investment. And that was the first one out. And
And those last two, I think you talked about too. We could talk about how prepared you were too. Your preparedness and your approach to these are getting far better.
It's a very noticeable difference on my own skill set of being able to run a show, especially talking
Big
back
time.
to these original episodes.
We skipped a lot without really talking about that, but like
for
no,
sure,
it's a good
really,
point. Yeah, it's a good point.
Right. Yep. We talked about 49 being that line in the sand, and it's the beginning of the run that I'm still on, and kind of having a higher quality of like, this is, I'm going to do it or I'm not. And I'm, that's 40 episodes later of me having that standard, and you can tell for sure. Number 91, 2 episodes later, November 8th, 2021, the wine episode with his coworker.
That was a great one.
I like that one.
I've heard so many, your grandparents will, like so many weird avenues of my life. And I checked it out and it was great. That one, another great original idea that I had, similar to like the rating episode from the women of like, I just had this idea where I was like, dude, let's get a bunch of wine and we'll just kind of take me to class. Original idea went super well, and I've heard a lot of people really liked it. Yeah, we had like 6 different bottles. Cost me a lot of money. I spent like $100 on it, but like, it was also fun. You know what I mean? And I took pictures of all the labels so that
It was a fun one to listen to as well.
Yeah.
Because I don't like wine at all, and I don't know anything about wine.
Yeah.
And I feel like if I sat down and did that with Will, he would find something where I'm like, "What? This is wine? Like, I didn't know that was out there."
Once again, passion.
Yeah.
When it came to your
That was
guests,
definitely.
it came across.
Yeah. And Will
Right.
and Will's definitely too humble because you can tell like it was your coworker, right?
Dakar, yeah.
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 He's totally like playing like like an idiot right now. He knows this stuff,
Yeah.
Right.
It comes across. He's definitely knowledgeable in his field.
It was a cool dynamic because it was me that didn't know anything, and when I don't know anything, you can clearly tell because I sound absolutely like an idiot. And listening back, I was like, Jesus, I sound so dumb in some parts. Like, what do
It's
you
not
mean?
dumb.
But I could
It's-
I think most listeners
Right.
could probably relate.
Right.
And so
I've
it was
heard
good.
that.
Yeah.
I've heard that. So there was me kind of taking the stance of the audience that probably doesn't know.
Right.
And also, it was interesting because I was kind of running the structure of like, all right, let's move into the next one. But you guys were feeding how much info. I just knew like, all right, we'll move into this. And I had some kind of generic questions of like, how is this made?
Yeah.
But you guys were filling in the gaps.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And so that was fun. And and also, it's like, oh, how am I going to run the show if I don't have the knowledge?
Yeah.
Because that was a very knowledge-based episode. So you guys really carried the show,
Yep.
which was a kind of an interesting dynamic for me.
As a listener, I want to do that now.
Yeah.
I want to do that sometime. Us all get
Let's
together
do
and run through wine and find something
Yeah.
because, I wouldn't mind getting into wine. I'm
Right.
just such a beer guy. I'm
Right.
sure there's something out there,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not one to venture out and go try a bunch of things.
I would
without,
love,
like, sitting down.
I would love for you to pitch in on the next time we do that. Yeah, for sure. Okay. That's great.
No, I laughed though for that one because my grandparents on like Thanksgiving, they're like, "Oh yeah, I listened to that episode," and I had to text him like the next
Yeah.
day. I was like, "Hey man, I know this is not the demographic you're going for this podcast, but my grandparents who are 75 plus listened to it and liked it."
Hitting all the levels here.
They were all caught up on Dave Ramsey and decided to dive into the wine. But no, it was,
It was a good one.
Right, and then we had me kind of the bottom tier for knowledge about the subject, and then Will knew a lot, and then we also had just a certified sommelier.
Expert.
Yeah.
So there was kind of it was a good show.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Number 92, November 15th, 2021 was Leslie Ferguson.
Oh yeah.
High school teacher. She had a book come out.
Mm-hmm.
This was a very interesting dynamic. She's normally in San Diego, and she's like, I'll come up and visit family. So she, came on here, was in my room, hadn't seen her since high school, and I was a total brat in her class. Very vulnerable show. I'm in the middle of reading her book right now. So far, it's very good, very vulnerable. And to be honest with you, the conversation we had after that show, just chilling in here, was as good for a personal level, if not better than the actual show. And the show
really?
I thought went really great. Yeah, we were just talking about pursuing what you really want to pursue, stuff like that. You know what I mean? And it was really great. And I think enough said.
Yeah,
It was
that was a good episode.
Right. And I mean, knowing me, I'm so tired in that episode. Like, I'm so just like, oh my gosh, I was exhausted. But it still came out really well. And I don't think you could really
it did.
tell. Number 96, the biggest star power I've had on the show by far, Mr. Tom Dreesen.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting episode. This gentleman opened for Frank Sinatra and was kind of his opener for 14 years. Has been in movies. He's in the movie Spaceballs as a small little extra.
Wait,
is cool.
really?
Yeah, which is obviously not a huge movie, but it's just cool because
That is a huge movie.
when they go in and they're like
freaking
infiltrating, he's
Spaceballs.
one of the guards. It's like, hey, what are you doing? He's like that guy. I'll have to show you.
Really?
Yeah, he's one of those
Okay.
guys. But anyways, another and clearly the most professional of like I'd call them once to set up a time, and then a couple weeks later, we're doing this thing via the internet. He wasn't in studio, and so it was literally like, all right, cool, man, you ready? He's like, yep, I'm ready. Like, I didn't know the guy at all. He was just like, all right, ask me your questions, which is very professional.
Yeah,
'cause
he was a
obviously-
good guest. Yeah.
But I was very proud of like, I didn't know this guy at all.
Uh-huh.
Clearly, he's doing me a favor, but I'm not going to act like I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. And like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And kind of ruin the vibe. Like, I'm going to be in the room with him.
Mm-hmm.
And just clear pro. And I asked him great questions. I'm not taking away from my ability, and it was good, and I knew his story. I read his book, so I kind of knew the story he was going to tell. But also, there was questions that I had already previously written down, and then also great questions that were clearly thought of in the moment. So I was proud on that. And he was just a pro.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You could tell he's told the story before, and he's also a famous comedian, and it was great.
Yeah.
And had to be written down because it's the biggest star power I've ever had.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Well, I even told you after that, I was like, it was, I don't remember exactly how long it was. It was an hour and 20 minutes or something like that. And I was like, that could have easily been 3.
Oh,
like,
for sure.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it was it was a combination of, like, there was a lot that's in his book that we could have talked about, but also, like, he's also doing me a favor kind of thing.
Oh,
like,
no, yeah. I get why, like, you didn't
Right.
go that long, but I was just saying, like, the way you would ask a question and you'd have a story and a reason and, like, everything, it was really well put together.
Good interactions.
there was no fat, to be
Mhm.
fair.
Yeah.
That is the way to put it.
Every question had a great story.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it was just like, boom, boom, boom for an
It
hour.
wasn't
and a
drug
Back
on.
to
It was,
back.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There wasn't like, it's pretty good. There's 10 minutes where you kind of like, like talked about this for a little bit, and I could have cut that out, but I left it. It was like, no.
Yeah.
It all needed to be in there.
Yep, I agree.
And he had a ton of story. Like, he could have...
He could tell a story too.
because,
Yeah.
like, you know,
Yeah.
for how long he opened for Frank Sinatra, he could have had so many more stories, but...
Yeah.
You were, no, you handled it like perfectly with the questions, like you said, and then even the off the cuff ones are pretty good too.
It's just an absolute pro. The guy's like 90 or 91. He's been on.
Is it really?
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. He looks good.
He looks
He does
great.
look
I didn't know he was that old.
Right. One of his best friends is Clint Eastwood, and he's about the same age. And he's got over 500 national TV appearances, like over 60 times on The Tonight Show. The dude's just a pro.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's friends with David Letterman. So it is interesting because there's. It's funny how, like, I can have you guys on that I don't want to say you're not professional, but you're just my friends.
Yeah.
And it's just as good of a show. It's different frequency. And then I have a total pro that I don't know at all, and where I can just lean. I have to have good questions for him, but totally just lean on him. Like, if you don't bring it, I got nothing because it's all about you. And they just deliver. You know?
Yep. That's the range I was
For
talking
sure.
about, though.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I that's what I love about the show is because, you know, we can have casual conversation where we're just, shooting the shit, having a good time.
Right.
And then you go to that one, it's like, wow, this is a legit show. Like, this is like,
Right.
that conversation, to me, I think that was probably the most professional show you've done.
Yeah.
To where it just
For sure.
seems, I don't know how to put it in words, but I really, and I think that show I enjoyed more on video than just listening.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah.
he's very interactive.
Yeah. He talks a lot with his hands.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And
for
so
sure.
I think I like the video aspect of that one.
It was. I've had nothing but issues with this. What's called Squadcast, and it's probably a little bit because it's old laptop, but with the kind of online interview thing, dude, I was sitting on that episode. I think I recorded it in like November, or I recorded it like.
No, you recorded it in,
Like-
I think, September, October, because I remember talking about it at my kid's birthday.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, man, like, are you gonna put it out?
Yep.
And I was, like, excited, and you're like,
It was
maybe
months I
this-
sat on that thing.
Yeah.
And it was really deflating, and I was so happy. The reason being is that there was all kinds of technical issues. It was not just audio drift issues with like his voice and his video wouldn't add up, and it was changing. It wasn't like the same off all the way through, which
Oh,
you can
got
fix.
it.
It was
Yeah.
like this moment was crazy fast and slow. It was a nightmare.
Oh wow.
To put that episode out with, I would say from everything from like reaching out, doing the show, which is an hour and a half, and then trying to figure out how to do it and trying to like finish product. Total time put into that show, minimum 30 hours. I'd spent
Wow.
hours trying to just adjust things and like 3 hours
Wow.
trying to adjust things and trying to make things match and going, all right, well, that's not going to work. Because it's not even like, oh, I don't want to put in the work. It's like, how am I going to fix this? I don't even
Yeah.
know how to do it. And like I said, I would like start. And the hard thing is it was like, oh, you got to get this done. But the video was, I had to keep having an episode come out every Monday. And because it's such a time suck to do all the video and everything, like 8 to 15 hours or whatever, it's gotten quicker. But,
Yeah.
it would basically have to be like making 2 episodes in a week, which it
Yeah.
was just like, that's not an option. So
Wow.
I mean, there was some I'd be like, it's coming out next week.
Yeah.
And so like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'd be fucking with it for hours at a night.
Mhm.
And then I'm like, fuck, I made zero progress, like of how to figure out how to do this. And I'm like, well, I got to have something for next week. Luckily, I'd kind of be ahead and like have other shows recorded.
Yeah.
So then I'd have to cram to do it that weekend to have the next episode.
Got it.
And it would
Yep.
just deflate you. I'm like, dude, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And I hated to throw it away, but I'm glad I got it out. It's
I
the
am too.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I
Yeah.
think we are too. Yeah.
the
Yep.
most, just a ton of work to put it out.
Well, newfound respect for the whole Zoom recordings.
I've had
Didn't
nothing but
know.
issues with it.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, to see the things that people are doing and producing right now because they have to do that too.
I don't
Some
know.
crazy issues there.
The biggest thing is you can't control. It's design. I'll make this really quick, but it's designed to run off like a certain frames per second, and it's like 30 frames per second. And a lot of times, I guess your computer sometimes is running off of like 29 point something,
Right.
Oh, okay.
which over an hour and a half screws it up.
Oh,
Right.
wow.
So there's a lot of that, and then also I'm running it off of the mic, and then your connectivity. So there's a lot of variables,
Gotcha.
right? And
That makes sense.
maybe the other person doesn't have quite as good internet, and maybe what mic are they? So you can't control it. Here,
Yeah.
I know the mics, I know the cameras, I know everything, I know exactly how it's going to work, and you just can't control it.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like having a bunch of you're trying to make a product, and there's 100 parts to this product you're going to sell, and you're getting it from like 100 different countries.
Mm-hmm.
And so you go to put it together, and it's like this batch doesn't work, and then the next week it's so hard to control.
Yeah. Yep.
And that energy is not the same. It works okay with doing interviews like that because it is. I'll ask a question and then he answers it.
Yeah.
But we're all laughing and like joking around and like sometimes you're talking over each other a little bit, but it's like it's laughter all kind of combining.
Uh-huh.
You don't really do that on Zoom.
Yeah.
Or
I would
it's
agree.
not Zoom. I've been
Right.
using Squadcast, but I was paying like $40 a month for it and it sucks. And I don't know if it's that because I did a lot of research and that's like one of two that are kind of the best. They're kind of a tie. So I don't know. Maybe I'll try something else, but it was deflating. I was like, cool, I'll be able to do this. And if I did move out, I didn't know if I was going to move. And I was like, cool, I can still do it and just zoom in. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's been nothing but problems.
Yeah.
So it's kind of deflating.
Yeah.
But ultimately, glad I got that episode out. That's the last one I have written down because we're on episode 100. So the last few have been really good. We already talked about it, 2021. But yeah, man, we're at an hour and 53.
Wow.
Oh wow.
Yeah. But what do you guys have? Do we already cover everything that you had?
Yeah, we covered everything.
Pretty much,
I just
yeah.
wanted to say, I think I've told you this before. Like in the beginning, of course, I started listening to the show because you're my buddy.
Supporting me, yeah.
It's totally turned into. I don't remember what it was. You were having issues like 3 weeks ago or whatever it was, a few episodes ago, to where it didn't upload right, and I'm like, Hoffa, you're ruining my fix, man. This is my Monday or Tuesday morning routine,
Right.
and there's nothing for me.
What it was is me. I had like one episode, and then I had Tom Dreesen's episode, and it was one of those days I just didn't make it happen. It was like Sunday. I was just like rode the couch, just feeling super depressed, and I was like, I need to do an episode for tomorrow, and I just didn't do it. And then I was like, all right, I'll do it tomorrow on Monday, and it'll be out on Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I managed to figure out how to do Tom Dreesen's episode. And so instead of doing his and rushing it out and doing it mid-Wednesday, I said, all right, you know what? No episode this week, and then next week will be this thing, which obviously people are like, oh, cool, there's no episode this week. In reality, I'm like, I finally figured out how to fucking do this show.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That I've been sitting on for like 2-3 months.
Yeah.
So, like, just wait for a week.
Yeah.
I've been doing this for like a long time. Just give me a week. But yeah, you text me. You're like, what the fuck?
But honestly, I am an authentic fan now. I mean, I really am. Like I enjoy listening to the show.
Yeah.
So when there isn't one, it really does screw up my week because this is kind of part of it. So
Thanks for being the one guy that does that, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, I always appreciate your feedback because if you like it, you'll tell me. But also, you're like, yeah, no, that one was, you've told me stuff that.
Yep.
It's,
I'm pretty honest with you. Yep.
Yeah, I appreciate the feedback. All
Yeah.
you guys.
I wrote something down about 15 minutes in, and we kind of hit on it already, but like appreciating the hustle of all this.
Yes.
Because I wrote down setup with an exclamation point.
Yeah.
And, you said it's an hour 53, and we're easier than other people. Like, we're just like, oh, let's just go.
Yeah.
And there's so much more work that goes into it with the editing and all that stuff, and I appreciate it. And like Jeff, we're all kind of avid listeners or watchers or however people are consuming this. And a lot of that goes unnoticed. Like, you don't have a producer. Like, you don't have an intern. Like, you don't have any
Your
of that.
editor.
You're doing this.
And I think what sold that too was the episode with the nerds. I don't remember their
Keeping up with the nerds.
Keeping up with the nerds.
Yeah, those 3 dudes.
and how they kind of like shared the burden.
Yes.
And you're like, dude, I'm a
Yeah.
one-man band.
Doing
Like, I'm doing everything.
Everything.
Yep.
And I think they felt it like, dude, that's a lot. Like, you're,
Yeah.
And you're working full time.
yes, and working full time.
Full time editor, lead man, hair and
Yep.
makeup. I mean, you're doing it all.
Right.
But it comes out great.
Yeah.
So
It's interesting, right? Because I want to talk about that and then one other thing. Don't let me forget the one other thing. But so it's a lot, and it kind of ties into what I'm going to talk about next in the sense of this pattern, right? Of me starting and stopping again in some of those solo episodes. It's not always the same. I do manage to keep it original, but there's definitely a pattern of me struggling more than other days of, the grind and going to work every day.
Mm-hmm.
And then also dealing with kind of what I talked about on 2021 of dealing with depression and my kind of tendencies, right? I talked about it. One of the main lessons that I learned for 2021 was that, for me at least, it's not a broken arm. It's alcoholism.
Yeah.
In the sense of like, it's not hey, something happened.
Disease.
You're sad for 2 months, but let's figure it out and now you're good.
Yeah.
It's always in your head, right?
Yep.
It's kind of that pet line. Even if everything's great, it's never attacked you. You've had it since a cub. You're always aware that it could kill you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that shook me, right, when I talked about that episode 32, that first solo show, a lot of what I talked about was being burnt out and being like, oh my gosh, I'm struggling to be motivated, and it's just overwhelming. I wasn't even doing video then, but it's just overwhelming. And it's literally like right where I'm at right now. It's like, oh my gosh, this is so overwhelming, and oh my gosh, my job, and blah, 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 blah. It's crazy that it's the same. I've grown so much, but it's still the same pattern.
Yeah.
But
do you recognize it now? It sounds like you kind of pick up on it now. Like, the pattern.
Yeah.
Do you know how to kind of break out of it?
Yes. And what I talked about on the 2021 episode, having that gnarly accident, which my wrist is fucked up, my knee's never going to be the same, which is a bummer. But having that time of 7.5 months off of work, to have that fresh perspective of going back to the grind that I've already had, and seeing like, all right, this is really toxic to me, which I already knew, but having that perspective of like being able to walk away from it, not like, oh, I took a week off, and like now I got to go back to it. It's like 7.5 months, to not only take that time off, but also that's enough time to where you get to indulge in other things. Yeah. And you go, wow, this is really actually what I find value in. And what I already knew was toxic is actually more toxic than what I really thought. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to lie, the video exacerbates that because which I've talked about. I don't want to complain too much.
Yeah.
Because you're just adding more work. It's not fun videos to make. It's just more workload, and it's even more burden, and it's like that percentage of the whole pie versus what I actually like to do, which is what this is, right?
Yeah.
Like talking and being on the show.
Mm-hmm.
That percentage of what the whole pie is getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
And it's not like I'm getting a ton of views or like I know. I know.
I'll just put it in perspective though.
I know.
Everyone has something in their job that they can't stand doing that's just part of it.
100%. No, I totally get that.
Yeah.
It's not a not wanting hard work, It's not what it is. It's just you realize what you're good at and what you're not.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yep.
But
So did you bring up the other thing? Sorry.
that was kind of what I wanted to
Okay,
bring up.
got it.
It's not that you're not good at it. It's just super time consuming.
The job that I have? Or this?
Well, like the setup and all the editing and stuff like that.
It's kind of crazy. Dude, how much I've learned, dude.
Yeah.
Bro. This is if you were gonna it's just forget everything else. Like what is this is all YouTube and just Googling and stuff. And just doing 100 episodes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you're gonna have to figure shit out.
Can't believe it's 100 episodes, dude.
Yeah. But the growth from those 100 episodes too. I mean, the quality.
Oh yeah. It is cool. You could you can see me grow.
Yeah.
As a person.
It's funny going through some of these. I can't wait to go back and listen to some of the ones we talked about.
There's some I want to go back now and listen again for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, it's. Thanks for the good times.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
100 eps, man. Congrats.
You're the man,
dude. This is kind of crazy.
Yep.
100 episodes.
100 episodes. That's impressive. That's hours and hours.
Yeah, it's kind of. I would say I've succeeded on every level other than numbers. Like, if you were to tell me you're going to be still delivering these numbers at 100, I'd be bummed. But every other metric, I think I've succeeded.
I was going to say, you're measuring success off of numbers.
Right.
But, I think, to me, it's the quality of your show.
Yeah.
And like I said, I crave it.
Right.
When there's not like I told you, and I'm always honest with you, but when there's not a show, I'm like, what the hell?
One example that I've thought of, and my mom actually reminded me of this recently, is I've talked to my cousin Chris, who is a few years older than me. Uh-huh. Through most of his 20s was in a few different bands, and one of the bands, he was the bass player, and he went on a European tour, has toured the nation, he's been to pretty much every state, and knows his favorite coffee shops of the nation, you know what I mean? Done multiple tours, Didn't really make a whole lot of money. Now he's not doing that anymore. And that burdens him a little bit, I think, in the sense of like, man, I'd never really made it, quote, made it.
Yeah.
And I've told him, I go, dude, because we always talk, I go, I'm the guy that grinded out the freaking apprenticeship that I had no real interest in doing, and now I make money. You know what I mean? You didn't do that, but I look at the experience. I've never toured the country a million times, and like he's played like thousands of shows. I go, dude, I've never done that. That's so fucking rad.
Yeah.
So don't say it's not a success.
Yeah.
And I have to look at it through that lens of this show.
Yep.
I've never made a dime off this show. I've never blah blah blah. The metrics wise, however, me as a man, I've grown so much. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, just look at this was me trying to like quickly go through this, and we're 2 hours in of like just monumental like conversations I've had in my lifetime that I was blessed enough to document it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Good times. And
so many awesome guests, brilliant stories.
Right. And they're recorded for forever. And
that's what's the cool part is that you going back and listening to it.
Oh yeah.
Totally different than, me going back and listening to it. I mean, to me, it's still a story.
Right.
For you lived it. Like this is a part of your life, the emotion, who you were as a person at the time.
Sure.
That's got to be crazy.
Yeah. I mean, the good times, it's like, I got to listen back to that because that was funny as fuck.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like I said, some of those solo shows, it's like, whew, man, I was in that moment, and I could totally still feel it. I still know what that feels like. And it's just, a lot of people, I think, and it could be good or bad, but you just have a feeling, and you think of, I can remember that feeling. And you go, okay, well, now in that moment, however many years ago, you put a ton of effort into, like, really articulating it the best you could, and you not just wrote it down, but you, like, articulated on you could hear your voice, like I said, I sound younger, like I sound a little different, like the tempo's a little different than how I do the show now. So it's like a super crazy documented feeling that I have to just refer back to.
Yep.
It's development,
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, it's the best and most complex version of lines on the door frame of how tall you're getting as a kid.
Yeah.
That's literally what it is, too.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah.
Can't wait to see how tall I get.
It's a good analogy. That's good.
That is a good analogy.
That's strong.
Yep.
Anyways, I think I've said what I wanted to say. Is there anything else you guys wanted to say before we wrap?
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, and we appreciate your behind the scenes because, like I said, I mean, we all look forward to it. So
yeah. I am moving to Montana, so I don't know what's going to happen with the podcast with that. I know I'm going to be doing something creative, whether it be photography or making just cool videos that aren't a podcast. I'm taking all the gear with me, so it's not going to be the last podcast I ever make. But so I don't know how that's going to look, right? But I needed this show, and I needed to hang out with you guys, whether it be on a show or not. But just to remind myself how much fun it is, what I mean? To give me motivation just to finish this out.
Yep.
But,
Yep.
You're going to have to change that to a bunch of trees.
Yeah.
And mountains.
I think
A little bit of snow.
Oh, yeah, none of the camera. Yeah, that. Oh, it's kind of on Jeff's camera over there. You could see a little bit of it. But.
So, okay. My camera just went off. Those have got to be coming off pretty soon.
Oh.
Let's wrap this show. All right.
Whoops.
All right, guys. Thank you again.
Congrats on 100.
Episode
Thanks
100,
for having
yeah.
us.
Yep.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Peace.
If you enjoyed this content, be sure to check out the Standing Still podcast, both here on YouTube and wherever else you listen to podcasts.